Lars Kepler's Stalker, Part 4, Chapter 1. The house at Bodwagen 5 only has 3 rooms, but the kitchen has a nice dining area and there is a basement and a small garden that backs onto a patch of forest. They bought it fairly cheaply and were able to move closer to the city. But the house won't make it through many more winters without some serious renovation work. Katrina Yusuf is sitting on the white sofa in front of the television. She is wearing her soft blue Hollister sweatpants and a pink t-shirt. She knows the varnish on her new nails dried a long while ago, but she still spread her fingers out as she reaches for her glass of wine. Seeing as Adam isn't home, she is taken the opportunity to do her nails. Otherwise, he goes out and sits in the car to avoid getting a headache. She takes a sip, then looks down at the iPad in her lap. Caroline hasn't updated her status yet. She hasn't said anything for an hour now, and she can't have been in the shower all that time. Surely, Katrina is watching an old film called Face Off on television, but is finding it rather far-fetched. She's got to work tomorrow, so shouldn't really sit up and wait for Adam. I am not going to either, she thinks and glances at the window as a bush in the garden bushes hard against the glass. Katrina yawns and stretches her ankle. Even though she ate a tuna salad earlier, she is hungry again. She carries on looking at the iPad, scrolls back and reads her own comments, then writes another one. With peculiar persistence, she looks at the latest picture of Caroline Winberg, the woman she is practically stalking. Caroline was discovered on an underground train on her way to football practice and is now a supermodel. It is rumored that she won't get out of bed for less than $25,000. Katrina follows her on all the forums there are and always know where she is and what she is doing. It is just turned out that way. She reaches for the glass of wine again and shivers when she realizes that the garden lights aren't working. The bushes look black against the glass. She is not sure if the light have worked at all that evening. It is not the first time they have gone wrong. Adam will have to check the fuse box. There is no way she is going down into the cellar, not after the break-in. She sees her own reflection in the dark window, drinks some more wine and looks at her nails. Someone broke in last Thursday when she and Adam were both at work, and now the lock on the cellar door is broken. They have tied a piece of rope around it so it feels locked if you pull it. Nothing of value was stolen, not the home cinema theater, the stereo or games console. Maybe they realized that Adam is in the police and changed their minds. It is possible that they saw his framed diploma from the police academy and got out as fast as they could. Adam thinks it was just some bored youngsters, but it is still a bit odd. Katrina thinks they could have taken their whiskey and wine or her jewelry. The Prada clutch bag that Adam gave her 2 years ago was laying out in the bedroom. She only discovered one missing object, a little cloth embroidered by her grandmother. Adam doesn't believe her. He reckons it will turn up and refused to mention it in the police report. Lamassu, the protective deity that her grandmother embroidered in pale red thread on white fabric has always sat on the bookcase next to the silver crucifix on a stand. Katrina knows someone has taken it. When she was little, she didn't like the embroidery at all. Her mum said that Lamassu watched over their home, but she could only see a monster. The close-stitched cloth depicted a man with a plaited beard, with the body of a bull and enormous angel's wings arching out from his back. Once again, she thinks of the rope that Adam would round the handle of the cellar door and then tied to the water pipe leading to the washing machine. She has made him looking through the house several times. Apart from the cellar, the part of the house she finds creepiest in the largest cleaning cupboard between the living room and the kitchen. It is like a dressing room with two unusually thick wooden doors. It used to be locked from the outside with a revolving wooden catch, but it is come loose. Now she and Adam just push the door shut, but they move, rubbing against each other and opening slightly as if someone's trying to peer out. A car's headlight reflect off the gilded icon on the bedroom wall, then the glass covering Adam's framed match jersey. Every home has its creepy corners, she thinks with a shudder. Room and corners that have stored up childhood fears of the dark over the ages. She drinks the last of the wine and gets up to go to the kitchen. Chapter 2. Katrina moves the wine box to the edge of the worktop, then fills her glass under the little tap, splashing some tiny red droplets on her hand. The wind is rattling the kitchen air vent. Through the glass door, she can see the empty street through the branches of the viburnum. The two wooden doors of the cleaning cupboard in the hall lead to the living room, knock against each other, then close tighter. She puts her glass down on an advert from Sephora, sucks the drop of wine from the back of her hand, looks at the glass, at the blunt woman on a flyer, and decided to keep the baby and not go through with the abortion. Katrina leaves her wine glass in the kitchen, thinks that she should send Adam a text message telling him she's changed her mind. She walks slowly, keeping her eyes on the heavy wooden doors the whole time. She feels almost compelled to look at them and stop when the far one starts to open slightly. Katrina takes a deep breath and hurries past. She forces herself not to run, but can feel the movement of the door as a shiver down her spine. She sits on the sofa and carries on watching the film. John Travolta has swapped faces with Nicolas Cage, but they just look like themselves. She can't help thinking about their neighbor. He gave her a funny look when he borrowed the rake, and she wonders if he knows she was at home on her own. Her iPad has gone dark, and she puts her finger on the screen and finds herself pointing straight at Caroline's smiling face. When the screen comes back to life, Katrina knows that if she turns her head to the left, she can see the cupboard doors reflected in the window at the back of the house. She needs to stop this. It is turning into an obsession. What if it was their neighbor who broke in and stole the cloth and a pair of her pants from the washing basket? If you knew that the cellar door was only held shut by a rope, by you could get in without making any noise at all. Katrina stands up and goes over the window and is drawing the curtain when she thinks she can see someone running across the grass. She leans closer. It is hard to see in the dark. A deer. It must have been a deer, she thinks, and closes the curtain with her heart pounding. She sits down on the sofa, switches the television off, and starts to text Adam. In the middle of a sentence, her phone rings, scaring her so much that she jumps. She doesn't recognize the number. Katrina, she says wearily. Hello, Katrina. A man says quickly. I am one of Adam's colleagues at National Crime, and he is not. Listen now. The man interrupts. Are you at home? Yes, I am. Go to the front door and leave the house. Don't worry about clothes or shoes. Just go straight out into the street and carry on walking. Can I ask why? Are you on your way out? I am going now. She stands up and starts to walk through the room, looking toward the cupboard doors as she goes round the sofa and turns toward the front door. A person wearing yellow rain clothes is standing on the doormat with their back to her, closing the front door behind them. Katrina quickly moves backward, goes round the corner and stops. There is someone in here, she whispers. I can't get out. Lock yourself in somewhere and leave your phone on. God, there is nowhere to. Don't speak unless you absolutely have to. Go to the bathroom. She is walking on unsteady legs toward the kitchen when she sees that the doors to the cleaning cupboard have slid open slightly. She can't think straight and open one of the doors, slips quickly inside the stands beside the vacuum cleaner, and pulls the door closer behind her. It is hard to close it properly when her fingers won't fit in the gap. She tries to get hold of the edge with her nails and pull it towards her. Katrina holds her breath when she hears footsteps outside the cupboard. They move off in the direction of the kitchen. The doors knock against each other. The doors slip open a couple of millimeters. She stands in the darkness with her eyes open wide and hears a kitchen drawer being opened. There is a metallic glittering sound and she is breathing in short gasps and suddenly thinks about the relic in the church in Sodertage. Adam didn't want to go in with her, but she went and looked at anyway. It was a fragment of bone belonging to Thomas, one of the apostles. The priest claimed that the Holy Spirit was still present in the relic, in the yellow fragment of bone inside the glass tube on the marble table. She reaches out her hand and tries to close the door but can't get any grip. Her nails just slide over the wood. She moves carefully to the side, but the mop and bucket are in the way. The handle of the mop touches her winter coat and a few empty hangers rattles softly on the rail. She manages to pull the door closed but loses her grip again. It swings open slightly and she can see a dark figure standing right outside the cupboard. Chapter 3. The door is yanked open and a man with a pistol steps backward. His mouth is half open and his dark brown eyes are staring at her. A smell of sweat reaches her. She registers every detail at that moment. His worn jeans with turned up cuffs, the grass stain on his right knee, his padded black nylon jacket, and the logo of the New York Yankees shone badly onto his cap. I am a police officer, he says in a gasp and lowers his gun. Oh God, she whispers and feels tears begin to flow. He takes her hand and leads her toward the hall as he reports back to control on his radio. Katrina is unharmed, but the suspect fled through the kitchen door. Yes, get the roadblocks set up and send some dog units over here. She walks beside the police officer, leaning her hand against the wall, brushing against her diploma from her makeup course. Give me a moment, the officer says, and open the front door to secure their exit. Katrina bends down to put her trainers on as a cascade of blood sprays across the hall mirror. Then she hears the sharp crack of the gun and the echo from the house on the other side of the road. The plainclothes officer throws his arm out, manages to grab the cords and pulls them with him as he falls. He collapses on his back among the shoes. The hangers rattle as blood pulses from the bullet hole in his back jacket. Hide, he gasps. Go and hide again. Two further shots ring out and Katrina moves backward. Someone is screaming like an animal outside. She stares at the wounded police officer and at the blood seeping along the cracks in the tiled floor. A window pane shatters as another shot echoes through the neighborhood. Katrina runs at a crouch through the living room, slipping on the debris rug and hitting her shoulder against the wall. But she manages to keep her balance, carries on out into the passageway and open one of the cleaning cupboard doors. The mop handle falls out, pulling the red bucket with it, and the strainer comes loose and clatters on to the floor. Katrina picks the mop up and tries to get it to stand up among the clothes. A jacket falls down, and the thick hose of the vacuum cleaner pushes the other door open. She hears two more shots, leaves the cupboard and carries on toward the kitchen. She sees the glass door and the darkness outside open the cellar door and start to go down the steep staircase. She is so frightened she can barely breathe and can only think that this is an organized hate-based crime, that the racists have found them, that they are upset about Adam buying a new Jaguar. She can hear police cars through the stone walls and thinks that she can hide in the boiler room until the police have caught the intruder. Her anxiety increases as she heads down into the darkness. She clings onto the cool handrail, blinks and opens her eyes wide, but can hardly see a thing. The air smells of stone, damp pipes and oil from the boiler. She is treading carefully, but the steps still creak under her weight. Finally, she reaches the tiled floor. She blinks and can make out the washing machine as a paler shape in the darkness next to the door with the rope around its handle. She turns round and moves in the opposite direction, past Adam's old pinball machine and into the boiler room. She carefully closes the door behind her and hears a whining sound. Katrina stands still with her fingers on the door handle, listening. The pipes are clinging faintly, but otherwise everything is quiet. She moves further in, away from the door, thinking that she will just sit here. It won't be long, not now that the police have arrived. She hears the whimpering sound again, very close to her. She turns her head but can't see anything. The whimpering becomes a weak, ceasing sound. It is coming from the safely valve of the hot water tank. Katrina feels her way forward and finds the paint-stained stepladder standing against the wall. She unfolds it in silence and moves it to the wall beneath the window up by the ceiling. Someone has stolen Lamesu, she thinks, the embroidered cloth with her protective deity, her protector. That is why this is happening. She can't stay in the house. She never wants to come back here again. She twists the two catches of the window and is pushing the little window against the weeds when she feels a cold draught around her ankles. Someone's coming up behind her. She is convinced of it. Someone's gotten through the cellar door. They have cut the rope holding it closed and are on their way inside. It is impossible to open the window properly. She tries again, but it keeps hitting something. Panting for breath, she reaches out with her arm through the weeds and feels that the lawn mower is parked too close. She tries to push it away with her hand, pushing even though she can feel the stepladder slide backward beneath her. She turns the wheel of the lawn mower by hand and manages to roll it a few centimeters. The window slides open and she starts to crawl out as the door to the boiler room bursts open and the light is switched on. The old starter switch makes the fluorescent tube flicker. Katrina tries to scramble out as the steps are yanked away from beneath her and clatter to the floor. Her legs thud against the wall. Her knees sting, but she clings onto the frame and fights to pull herself up. The first stab of the knife hit her back so hard that she hears the point scrape the concrete wall in front of her. Chapter 4. Ada Yusuf is lying on his stomach on the paved path outside his home with his hands cuffed behind his back. His thigh is throbbing. His black jeans are wet with blood, but the superficial gunshot wound doesn't really hurt. Blue lights from various vehicles are pulsing over the dark greenery of the garden in a peculiar rhythm. A police officer presses his knee into Adam's shoulder, blades and yells at him to be quiet while he explains the situation to the operational team. Katrina's still in there. Adam pants. The operational leads officer is in direct contact with the head of the Stockholm Rapid Response Unit, trying to coordinate their effort. The first team is forcing the windows and doors, securing entry and letting the paramedic through. The officer who has been shot is rolled out on a stretcher, while staff at the Karolinska Hospital in Heding have been warned to prepare for immediate sedation and an operation. Adam tries to pull free, but is struck too hard across the kidney that he loses his breath. He coughs and feels a police officer pressing his knee against the back of his neck, grabbing his jacket and roaring at him to lie still. I am a police officer and shut up. The second officer takes Adam's wallet, backs way slightly, and the gravel crunches beneath his shoes as he looks at Adam's police badge and ID. National crime, he confirms. The police officer removes his knee from Adam's back and stand up, breathing hard as the pressure is removed from his neck and lung. Adam catches his breath and tries to roll over onto his side. You shot a plainclothed police officer. The officer says, he had my wife. I saw her with him and thought he was the first officer on the scene and he was on his way out with her. Everyone had received that information. Just get her out. Adam begs. What the hell are you two doing? A woman shouts. It is Margot. Adam sees her legs through the blackberry bushes by the road as she walks through the gate and stops. He is a police officer, she says, and takes several shallow breaths. It is his wife, who he shot the colleague. One of the officers says, it was an accident. Adam says, I thought. Don't say anything else, Margot interrupts. Where is Katrina? I don't know. I don't know anything, Margot. I am going in, she says, and he watches her feet move along the path. Tell her, I love her, he whispers. Help him up, Margot tells the two officers, and get those handcuffs off. Put him in one of the cars for the time being. She starts to walk toward the house with both hands round her stomach. A young man from the rapid response unit comes out through the front door with his helmet in his hand. He passes Margot and throws up right across the front step, then carries on down the garden path with a glazed look on his face. He unfastens his bulletproof vest and lets it fall to the ground, emerges onto the street and throws up again between two parked patrol cars, then leans on the bonnet of one of the cars and spits. The two officers take hold of Adam's arm, pull him up on to his feet and lead him away from the house. He feels blood trickling down his thigh from the gunshot wound. They lead him off to a patrol car and sit him in the back seat, but leave the handcuffs on. Another ambulance passes the cordon and is waved forward by the police. Adam can hear the sharp clatter of a helicopter and looks toward the front door to see if Margot is coming out with Katrina. When the fourth video was received at National Crime, the system spun into action instantly, the way that it should. One of the technicians was a good friend of Adam Yusuf. He recognized Katrina on the film and issued immediate emergency information on the National Crime intranet, then called Adam. To save time and maintain tactical efficiency, a so-called special event was declared, and the various divisions within police coordinated their effort as rapidly as possible. The alarm was sounded on police radio, covering the southern and western police district, as well as the city center, Naka and Soderton. The officer closest to Volkswagen 5 was a plainclothes detective rather than a patrol car. He was on the scene just 7 minutes after the video was received by the police. Chapter 5. It feels like an eternity before Adam sees Margot again. She is walking slowly, holding the handrail, then stops with her hand round her stomach. Her nose is pale and her forehead is shiny with sweat as she walks toward him out in the street. Get those fucking handcuffs off, she says with barely suppressed anger to the police officers. They hurry to free Adam. He messages his wrists and looks into her eyes, sees her dilated pupils and feels a wave of nausea rise in his stomach. What is going on? He asks in a frightened voice. She shakes her head, comes closer, glances quickly toward the house and then looks back at him again. Adam, I am sorry. I can't tell you how sorry I am. What for? He asks stiffly, opening the car door. Sit down, she says, but he gets out of the car and stops in front of her with a peculiar feeling of being completely weightless. Is it Katrina? He asked. Just tell me. Is she hurt? Katrina is dead. I saw her in the doorway. I saw her. Adam. She pleads. Are you sure? Have you spoken to the paramedics? She hugs him, but he pulls free. Take a step back and sees some heavy blackberries swaying on thin branch. I am so terribly sorry, she says again. You are sure she is dead? I mean, the ambulance. What is the ambulance doing here if she is? Katrina will stay here until the forensic examination of the scene is complete. Is she in the hall? Can you tell me where she is? In the boiler room. She must have hidden in the boiler room. Adam looks at her and the pain in his thigh is suddenly throbbing, all encompassing. He watches all the police officers leaving the house and gather for a debriefing over by the command vehicle. A flash of insight passes through his mind. His wife was almost safe, but he shot the police officer who was on his way out with her. I shot a colleague, he says. Don't think about that now. You are sleeping at mine tonight. I will call the boss. She tries to take hold of his arm, but he turns away. I need to be alone. Sorry, I. The helicopter is hovering a short distance away over the sports ground. It looks like. Did they get the preacher? He asked. Adam, we are going to get him. He is in the area. We are deploying everything we have got, absolutely everything. He nods a few times, then turns away again. Just give me a moment, he whispers, take a few steps and picks at the branches of a bush. You have to stay here, Margot says. Adam looks at her for a few seconds, then begins to wander slowly out into garden. He is holding his face, pretending to try to absorb what she is said. But he knows he needs to see Katrina because he doesn't believe them. It can't be true. It isn't true. Katrina has nothing to do with this. Others start walking around the house. The green horse is laying in the unworn grass. A swarm of gnats is visible in the shimmering blue light. It gets darker when he reaches the back of the house. Adam sees himself as a black silhouette in the red dome of the round barbecue. He goes round the corner and sees that the cellar door is open. The rope has been cut. He goes inside. The lights are all on down there. He can hear people walking about upstairs. A forensic officer is laying out walking plates. Adam takes another step in, and that is when he sees Katrina in the cold neon light of the boiler room. She is sitting, leaning against the boiler, and there is blood everywhere on her sweatpants, her vest, the floor. Her hair is tucked behind one ear, but most of her face is gone, hacked off. Dark blood glints across the wall of her ribcage, and her left hand appears to be squeezing the fingers of her right hand. Adam staggers backward, hears the sound of his own breathing, knocks over a pocket of washing powder, stumbled over his own Wellington boot, and emerges into the garden again. He is gasping for breath but can't get enough air into his lung and start poking at his mouth. Nothing is comprehensible anymore. The alarm was sounded half an hour ago and now everything is irrevocable. Adam turns to walk back and is just passing the compost heap when he hears a branch creak in the forest. An officer comes round the corner of the house and calls for him, but he carries on his amongst the trees, following the sound of someone moving in there. Behind him, the floodlights are switched on, flooding his home and garden with light. The trunks of the trees shine grey, as if they were covered by a layer of ash, as if he were in an underground forest. 20 meters in stands a man looking at him. Their eyes meet between the gently glowing stumps, and it takes Adam a few seconds to realize who the man is front in him. The psychiatrist Eric Maria Burke. It is like a lightning flash in his head when he realizes everything. Awareness hits him like an axe striking a block of wood. Adam reaches down and pulls the little pistol from his ankle. There is a rasping sound as the velcro comes loose. He feeds a bullet into the chamber, raises the pistol and fires. The shot hits the top of the branch in front of Eric's face and is deflected. Splinters fly up and he sees the psychiatrist flinch. His hand is shaking. He tries to aim lower. The psychiatrist moves backward and he fires again. The shot simply disappears as dark branches sway between the two of them. He sees the psychiatrist run, crouching down, then slide down a slope and vanish behind a thick tree trunk. Adam follows, but he can no longer see him. He runs straight into some fir branches. Police officers who have heard his shots come running from the garden, and the entire edge of the forest is suddenly full of bright light. Put your gun down, someone calls out. Adam, put your gun down. Adam turns round and raises his arms. The killer's still in the forest. He gasps, it is the hypnotist. It is the fucking hypnotist. Chapter 6. Eric takes a deep breath and stares up at the night sky and dark tree tops. He must have passed out after he fell. His back is hurting badly. He knows he scraped himself as he slid down the slope. He stands up and reaches his hand out to the wet rock face. He can smell moss and ferns and looks up to see the glow of bright light flickering through the trees above. The crouches down and pushes his way through the undergrowth, holding a branch out of the way and moving away from the slope. The distant sound of dogs barking merges with the clattering noise of an approaching helicopter. Eric followed the preacher down a narrow path, but it grew so dark as the trees became thicker that he lost track of him. He stood for a while and listened, but heard nothing more than the wind through the branches high above him. In the end, he decided to go back to the car and wait there. Then sirens from the number of emergency vehicles all seemed to converge somewhere on the road on the far side of the woodland. He began to walk in that direction instead, thinking that Juna just have put the police on the right track, that they may even have caught the preacher. The forest was overgrown and rocky, and it took him time to make his way through in the dark, but after a while he could make out flashing blue-grey light between the trees, and suddenly he was standing in front of Ada Yusuf from the National Criminal Investigation Department. Ada looked me in the eyes and fired, Eric thinks, as he runs down a slope. What is happened? What happened to the zone after I left? Loose stones slide under his feet and he almost falls, grabs a branch with his hand and cuts himself on something. He feels his palm grow wet with blood and stops gasping, trying to calm his breathing as he hears the helicopter above the treetops again. Do they think he is involved in the murder because he didn't tell the whole truth about knowing the victim? Eric thinks about how he lied to the police, how he withheld Rocky's alibi and kept quiet about what Bergen said under hypnosis. The helicopter hovers above the forest, searching with a spotlight, getting closer and closer. He need a hide. Branches rustle, treetops sway, leaves come loose and swirl through the air. He can feel the clattering of the rotors inside him. Eric presses against the tree, standing absolutely still as the branches lash around him. This is completely mad, Eric thinks, feeling the whirling air tug at his clothes. I was very nearly shot. Dry earth and fallen pine needles fly up into his face. The helicopter sweeps on and the searchlight moves away through the forest, flickering through the tree trunks. He is the person they are hunting. In a few rays of light some 20 meters away, he sees two heavily armed response unit officers with helmet, bulletproof vests and green assault rifles. One of them turns in Eric's direction just as the light of the helicopter reaches him through the canopy of trees. Adrenaline shoots through Eric's blood like an injection of ice. A shot fires just as everything goes dark again. He sees the flare of the barrel as the bullet slams into the tree trunk immediately above his head. The sound of the shot echoes off the rocks. The helicopter rises up and the clattering sound is deafening. Eric rushes at a crouch across the clearing without looking back, sliding down on his backside, running through dense undergrowth until he can see streetlight through the branches. He carries on, approaching the road with caution. A car drives past and some distance away he can see a roadblock, spike strips, patrol cars and officers in black uniforms. Eric hides behind some bushes, his back wet with sweat. The uniformed officers are close now. He saw hear them talking into their radio. Then they walk away in the other direction towards the command vehicle with its black windows. The helicopter makes another circuit of the woodland. The sound echoes hard between the house along the road. Eric slides down into the ditch and climbs up the other side, not looking at the police, and walks straight across the tarmac road. He hurries through two crooked gates next to a rusty turnstile, and follows a path leading to Vesberga School's playing field. A red running track form a huge ellipsis round a football pitch, and the floodlight on their tall pole are illuminated. Eric's heart is beating so hard that it hurts his throat as he picks up one of the footballs by the fence behind the goal and walks over the touchline. He heads slowly across the pitch in the middle of the light, kicking the ball in front of him. As he reaches the center circle, the helicopter flies over again. He doesn't look up, just keeps kicking the football ahead of him. With every meter, the distance between him and the police is growing. With the ball at his feet, he makes his way across the whole playing field. The helicopter is already a long way away. Then Eric kicks the ball into the goal, crosses the track, climbs over the gate and emerges onto a road where the traffic appears to be flowing perfectly normally. He passes telephone plant, underground station, and is still heading away from the police operation when Juna Lina calls him. Juna, what is going on? Eric asks, trying to keep his voice steady. The police are hunting me with a helicopter. They have tried to shoot me. This is crazy. I haven't done anything. I was just following the preacher. Hang on, Eric, just hold on. Where are you now? Are you safe? I don't know. I am walking along an empty street past telephone plant. I don't understand any of this. You followed the preacher to Adam's home, Juna says. His wife is the latest victim. She is dead. No, Eric gasps. They are all panicking, Juna says darkly. They seem to think you are guilty of the murder because. So talk to them, Eric interrupts. You were seen near the house right after the murder. Yes, but if I... Eric falls silent as he hears a car approaching. He ducks into doorway and turns his back to the street. Can't I just hand myself in? He asks once the car has gone. Not about a plan, Juna replies. You don't trust the police? Eric asks. They just tried to shoot you, Juna says, and if that wasn't a mistake, then there are people in the force who are out for revenge. Eric runs his hands through his wet hair, struggling to understand all the improbable things that have happened over the past few days. What are my options? He asks in the end. What do you think I should do? If you can let me have a bit of time, I will try to find out what is happening with the police operation. Juna says, I will find out what they are saying about you internally. And if there is a safe way for you to come in, okay. But you need to lie low, Juna says. How do I do that? What do I do? They have already got your car. You can't go home. You can't go to any of your friends. Ditch your phone after this conversation because you know they can track it even when it is switched off. They are probably tracing it now, so we don't have much time. I understand. Sweat is running down Eric's cheeks as he tries to listen to Juna's advice. Find a cash machine and take some money out, as much as you can. This is your only chance to do that. But before you withdraw the money, you need to work out how to get to another part of town quickly, because they will be ready if you make the slightest mistake. Okay, buy a used pay-as-you-go phone and call me. So I have got the number, Juna goes on. Don't contact anyone else and go and sleep in a shelter that won't demand any ID. After this, everyone's going to believe I am guilty, Eric says. Only until I find the preacher, Juna replies. If I can get a chance to hypnotize Rocky, I know I could find out the sort of details that is no longer possible, Juna interrupts. He is back in custody. Chapter 7. When Juna gets back to his old room early the next morning, Margot is sitting behind her desk wearing a t-shirt with the text Gays with trucks are not lesbians. Her thick plait has almost come unraveled. She has dark rings under her eyes and deep lines around her mouth. I have been to an emergency meeting of senior officers, she tells him, helping herself to a bag of seeds. The regional police chief, Carlos Anika, from the National Police Board, the preliminary investigation is now top priority. We are getting a lot more resources. A national alert has been issued and they are preparing for a press conference tomorrow. How is Adam? Juna asked. I don't know. He is been relieved of duty. Doesn't want to see a counselor. He's got his family round him. But terrible, Juna says. Juna hopes Eric has taken his advice to destroy his phone immediately after their conversation during the large police and emergency services operation at a sofa zone in Hagdalen. They had to charter a bus to take all the people they would apprehended to the custody until in Harding, while they waited for a decision from the prosecutor about arrests. The high number of dead and injured were assumed to be the victim of a bloody power struggle in the criminal underworld. One of the men taken into custody for possession of narcotics was Rocky-Coelho. He had 11 capsules each containing 250 milligram of 30% heroin hidden in his clothes. We saw the murders at the zone. Eric followed him too. Katrina, Juna says, leaning forward. How do you know that? Eric didn't do it, Juna says. Juna, Margot sighed. You can discuss this with me. I know the two of you are friends, but be careful when you see the others. They need to know that he is innocent. You don't want it to be Eric, but perhaps he's been deceiving you, she says patiently. I saw a man in a yellow raincoat at the zone and remembered what Philip Cronstead said about yellow oilskins. Eric followed him and ended up at Adams. So, how do you explain the fact that he knew all the victims, including Katrina? Margot says, holding his gaze. When did he meet her? She was with us one time when Adam and I were round at his, she replies, and Susanna Kern worked at the Karolinska as a nurse. She was on a course where Eric was one of the lecturers. We have got security camera footage of him talking to her. Juna gestures with his hand as if to say that the information is irrelevant. So why would Eric be known as the preacher? He asked. He is smart. He's tricked you. He can make Rocky remember anything he wants him to. Why? Juna, I don't know everything yet, but Eric has been close to the investigation and has been hampering our progress. We have finally got a witness statement from Bergen Kern, and it is very clear that Eric didn't tell us that Susanna's body was posed with her hand over her ear. Did he see that when he was hypnotized. Eric knew the information about the ear would lead us to Rocky and then to him. And that doesn't make sense, Margot. And Eric visited Rocky at Pursudan a few days before I asked him to go. Juna's eyes turned cold as ice as he puts his hand on the folder. This isn't evidence, he says. You know that, don't you? It is enough to bring him into custody and enough for a search warrant, enough for a national alert, she replies stiffly. It sounds to me like he's been conducting his own investigation and the rest is just coincidence. He fits the perpetrator profile. He is divorced, single, has a history of substance abuse and so have half the police force, Juna interrupts. The murders are extremely voyeuristic. We know that Eric is obsessed with filming his patients even under hypnosis when they don't know anything about it. That is just to stop him having to take notes. But he's got thousands of hours in his archive and a stalker is almost always slow, methodical. The investment in time is part of the ownership process, part of the quasi relationship that develops. Margot, I hear what you are saying, but could you at least entertain the possibility that Eric is innocent? Juna asks. That is possible, certainly, she replies honestly, in which case you also have to consider the possibility that we are losing sight of the real murderer, the one we are calling the preacher. She forces herself to look away from him and glances at the time. The meeting's about to start, she says, getting to her feet. I can find the preacher if you want me to, Juna says. We have already got him, she replies. I need my gun. I need all the material, the reports from the crime scenes, the postmortem. I really shouldn't agree to that, she says, opening the door. And can you arrange for me to see Rocky curled in prison? Juna asks. You don't give up, do you? She says with a smile. They walk slowly along the corridor together. Margot stopped Juna outside the meeting room. Bear in mind that the people waiting in here are Adam's colleagues, she says with her finger on the door handle. The tone of the meeting is likely to be pretty tough. They need to vent their anger. It is their way of showing their support for him and the force as a whole. Chapter 8. Juna follows Margot into the large meeting room. She makes a gesture that simultaneously say hello to everyone and tells them to remain seated. Before we start, I know emotions are running high at the moment and we are a tolerant bunch, but I would still like to encourage everyone to stick to a civilized tone, she says. The preliminary investigation is entering a new phase and will now be actively led by the prosecutor while we focus on making a quick arrest. She stops and catches her breath. But our bosses have asked me to bring in Juna Lina, seeing as he is the homicide detective with the best results. There is no contest, frankly, and a few of the officers clap while others sit there staring at the table. Naturally, he won't be officially involved in the preliminary investigation, but I hope he will be able to give the rest of us mere mortals a few tips along the way, Margot jokes, even though her eyes show no sign of amusement. Juna takes a step forward and looks at his former colleagues seated around the pale wooden table before speaking. Eric is no murderer. What the fuck? Peter mutters. Let us hear him out, Margot says curtly. I appreciate that. There is a lot of evidence pointing at Eric. and he should certainly be brought in for questioning. But seeing as I am here to tell you what I think, Juna, I just want to say that I have had a meeting with the prosecutor. Benny says her opinion is that we have very compelling evidence. The puzzle isn't finished just because three pieces fit together. For fuck's sake, Eric was there. Benny goes on. Outside the house, we found his car. He knows the victim. He is lied to the police, etc., etc. I understand that you have already shot at him with live ammunition, Juna says. He is regarded as extremely dangerous and probably armed, Benny says. But it is all a mistake, Juna says, pulling out a chair. He sits down at the table and leans back in his chair, making it creak. We are going to bring Eric in, Margot says, and he will be remanded in custody and given a fair trial. Try catching a will o' the whip, Juna says quietly, thinking how the law is doomed never to achieve custody. What is he talking about? Benny asks. The fact that you are directing your own fears against an innocent man because we are not fucking afraid, Peter interrupts. Calm down, Margot says. I am not going to sit here and listen to Peter, she warns. The room falls silent. Magdalena Ronander fills her glass of water and tries to catch Juna's eye. Juna, maybe you are thinking slightly differently because you are no longer a police officer, she says. I don't mean anything negative, but that might be why we don't understand what you are saying. I am saying that you are letting the real murderer get away, Juna replies. Right, that is enough of this bullshit, Benny roars, slamming both hands down on the table. Is he drunk? Someone whispers. Juna doesn't give a shit about the force, and he doesn't give a shit about us, Peter says in a loud voice. There is so much fucking talk about him. I don't get it. Look at him. He dropped his fucking gun. It was his fault Adam got shot, and now maybe it would be best if you left, Margot says, putting a hand on Juna's shoulder. And now he comes here and tries to tell us how to run an investigation, Peter concludes. One more thing, Juna says, standing up. Just shut up, Peter snaps. Let him speak. Magdalena says. I have seen this plenty of time, Juna says. When family, friends or colleagues are directly affected, it is easy to start thinking of revenge. Are you trying to say that we aren't going to act rationally? Benny asked with a cold smile. I am saying that there is a chance that Eric will contact me, and I would like to be able to offer him safe passage, Juna says seriously, so that he dares to turn himself in and have his innocence proven in court. Of course, Magdalena replies, looking at others. That is right, isn't it? But if it is true that you have already fired at him, how am I supposed to convince him to hand himself in? Just tell him we guarantee his safety, Benny says. And if that isn't enough, Juna says, lay better. He grins. Juna, have you actually seen the pictures of Katrina? Peter says agitatedly. I can't believe it is even her. What do I say to my wife? This is so fucking sick. I mean, think about Adam. Think about what he is going through right now. I have to say, I personally don't give a shit what happened to your friend. Everyone's upset, Margot says. Obviously, we want to make it easier for him to hand himself in, and naturally, he will get a Fair trial. Assuming he doesn't hang himself in his cell before then, says a young officer who has been quit up to now. That is enough, Magdalena says, or swallow some broken glass, Benny mutters. Juna pushes his chair back and nods toward the other. I will be in touch with. I have found the real killer, he says and leaves the room. He's totally fucking pathetic, Peter mutters as his steps fade away down the corridor. Before we go on, I want to say something, Margot begins. Like you, I believe that Eric is the murderer, but if we all take a step back, can we even entertain the possibility that we might be wrong, that Eric is actually innocent? Aren't you supposed to be giving birth soon? Benny asked sarcastically. I will give birth when I am done with this case, she replies dryly. Let us get to work, Magdalena says. Okay, this is how things stand at the moment, Margot says. We have issued a national alert, but we know that Eric's got enough money to leave the country. We have started our searches of both Eric's home and his place of work. We are trying to trace his mobile phone. His bank card have been blocked, but he managed to withdraw a large amount last night. The area around the cash machine is being searched. We are watching 5 addresses and she tails off when there is a knock at the door. Anja Larson enters the room without acknowledging the others. She leans over and has a whispered conversation with Margot. Okay, Margot says after a while. It looks like we have managed to trace Eric's mobile. He is somewhere close to Waxjaw in Smaland. It looks like he is heading south. Chapter 9. Eric is laying wrapped up in the grey cover he took from a parked motorbike. He wakes up, freezing. It is light now, and he realizes he is underneath an amelanchier in a thickest of ornamental shrubs. He must have slept for 3 hours, and his body feels tight with cold. His whole body aches as he sits up and looks around. A dark, bronze woman in old-fashioned clothes stares blindly at him from her plinth. The sun is shining off, the green leaves sparkling in the cold. Eric climbs over a red fence and crosses over to the shaded side of the street. He slowly warms up as he walks. He can't really believe anything that happened yesterday. He was heading towards Aspuden on foot when he spoke to Juna, who told him to get rid of his phone. Eric ducked into a doorway, copied down the most important numbers in his contacts, then switched his phone off. In front of a bike shop on Haggerston Wagon, he found a bus with the word Smalands Bussen on the side. A group of weary-looking youngsters in crumpled clothes was gathered on the pavement. Parents were helping to unload rucksacks and sleeping bags from the open baggage compartments. Eric went inside the bus, pretending to look for something that had been left behind, and quickly pushes his mobile down between 2 seats. He stepped out of the rear door, grabbed a cap from a case and tucked it inside his jacket, then carried on toward the underground station. He stopped at the cash point in front of the Nordea Bank. He didn't look up, but was aware of the security camera as he withdrew the maximum amount possible from his account. Then he walked back toward the bus again and watched as the doors closed and it drove off. Only a couple of youngsters were left on the pavement. Eric pulled on the baseball cap as he hurried along chathen-bhagat, crossed the Liljeholmen Bridge, bought water and a large hamburger from the Singens Grillen kiosk and headed into a back street where he stood in a doorway and ate. When he was done, he carried on walking, steering clear of Main Street with banks and traffic surveillance cameras, and just kept walking for as long as he could until he eventually found himself in Wittenberg's Sparken. Eric ran his fingers through his hair to flatten it. His clothes are creased but not dirty enough to attract attention. He needs to stay hidden until he can talk to Juna. He daren't take any risk, even if the misunderstanding has hopefully been cleared up by now. Eric starts to cross the street but stops abruptly between two parked cars when he happens to see a convenience store. His stomach gurgles with unease among the notification of lottery wins and adverts for the football pools. The fly sheets of the evening tabloids scream, "Police hunt Swedish serial killer." He recognizes himself from the pixelated photograph. In accordance with press ethics, they have kept his identity hidden. It is only a matter of time, but for the moment, his features are concealed by a mass of grainy squares. The early edition of the other tabloid has no picture, but the headline covers the whole flysheet in capital letters: National Alarm, Swedish psychiatrist sought for 4 murders. Under the headline, the paper's content are listed: victim pictures, brutality, police. He steps up onto the pavement and passes the shop. As it gradually dawns on him, the police really do believe that he murdered Katrina and the other woman. He is the man they are hunting. Eric turns into a side street and his legs start to stake so badly that he has to slow down and eventually stop. He stands there, clutching a trembling hand to his mouth. "Oh God," he whispers. Everyone Eric knows will work out that he is the man being referred to when they read the articles. Right now, they will be calling each other shocked, excited, disgusted. Some of them will be full of schadenfreude. Others will be skeptical. It feels like he is falling, but somehow he is still standing. Benjamin will know it isn't true, Eric thinks, and start walking again. But Madeleine will be frightened once his real identity starts to be blared out. Through an open car window, he catches fragment of a conversation in which he imagines he hears his own name mentioned. Eric thinks that he is going to have to hand himself over to the justice system after all, so that he can defend himself. This can't go on. He pulls out a blister pack containing 4 Magadon pills, presses one into his hand, but changes his mind and throws the whole lot in a rubbish bin on Getten. He finds a small shop selling second-hand mobile phones. While he is waiting to be served, he listens to the news on the radio. A neutral voice explains coolly that the hunt for the suspected serial killer is now in its second day. His stomach contracts as if he were about to be sick when he hears the voice say that an arrest warrant has been issued for a psychiatrist at the Karolinska Hospital on reasonable suspicion of having murdered 4 women in the Stockholm area. The police are saying little otherwise out of consideration for the ongoing investigation, but are hoping to receive further information from the public. The man behind the counter, with the arm of his glasses held together by a piece of tape, asks how he can help, and Eric tries to smile as he explains that he would like a pay-as-you-go mobile. A senior police officer is explaining about the resources that have been deployed in the search and how this has already given positive results. Eric changes direction as soon as he leaves the shop. He switches streets a number of times, but in aiming to leave the center of the city via Danvik's skull, he doesn't dare stop and take out the phone before he is past the tram museum. He stands facing a yellow brick building and calls Juna Lina. Juna, this is impossible, he says quickly. Have you seen the papers? I can't keep on hiding. You have to give me more time. No, I have made up my mind. I want you to arrest me and take me to the police. I can't guarantee your safety. I don't care, he says. I have never seen the police so cut up, and not just Adam's colleagues. It is right across the board. Juna says, it is one thing to risk your own life. You are aware of that when you enter operational service, but violence of this sort, directed at a police officer's wife, you have to tell them, I didn't do this. You, I have, but they have linked you to each of the victims and you were seen at the crime scene. What do I do? Eric whispers. Stay hidden until I find the preacher, Juna replies. I am going to talk to Rocky. He is in custody in Hadding prison. I could hand myself over to one of the evening tabloids, Eric says, aware of how desperate he sounds. I could tell my own story, my version, and then I would have journalists with me when I went to the police. Eric, even if that was possible, they are already talking about your suicide in custody, about you hanging yourself or swallowing a piece of glass before the trial. It is all a little of talk, but I don't want you to take the risk right now. I will call Nellie. She knows me. She knows I can't have done this. You can't do that. The police are watching her house. You need to find someone else you can stay hidden with. Someone more distant, unexpected. Eric and Juna end the call. The cars are standing still. The bridge is being opened. 3 sailing boats are on their way out to the Baltic. Chapter 10. Hadding prison is one of the largest secure facilities in the Swedish judicial system. Oscar-wilde is only suspected of basic narcotics offenses and is therefore not subject to any particular restriction, but he is regarded as a high escape risk. The prison is a vast V-shaped brown brick building with an entrance flanked by tall pillars. At the rear are 2 wings shaped like fans, each of whose top floors contain 8 individual excise areas. Rocky is the only person who knows who the unclean preacher is. He has met him, spoke to him, and has seen him kill. Juna has to hand over his eyes, keys and phone at the security check. They x-ray his shoe and jacket and he is searched after passing through the metal detector. A black and white cocker spaniel circled him, sniffing for explosive and drugs. The prison officer waiting for him at the door introduced himself as Ernie Melander. As they head toward the lifts, he tells Juna that he is a competitive angler, that he came third in the Swedish course fishing championship at the start of the summer, and that he is heading to the Iris River at the weekend. I went for bottom fishing, Ernie explains, pressing the lift button, and use pink and bronze colored maggots. Sounds good, Juna says seriously. Arnie smiles. His cheeks lift and grow rounder. He has a large grey beard and is wearing glasses and a dark blue NATO sweater that is stretched tight across his big stomach. His baton and alarm swing from his belt as they leave the lift and pass through the security doors. Juna waits quietly as the prison officer pulls his card through the reader and taps in the code. They say hello to the duty officer, a white-haired man with a lazy eye and thin lips. We are running a bit late today. The duty officer says, Curlod has just gone out for some air, but we can check if he wants to come back in. Please do, Juna says. After the murder of prison officer Karen Gebrev, the rules have been tightened and no member of staff is allowed to be alone with any of their clients. The inmates are often desperate, in a state of upheaval after their crimes, the humiliation of their arrest, and the recognition of their failure in life. Juna watches Ernie Melander as he stands a little way off, walking in a communication radio. He stares at bare walls, the doors, the shiny linoleum floor, and the corded locks. Heading prison is eventually high security, totally enclosed with reinforced doors and walls, entrance checks and camera surveillance, but the staff are only armed with batons. Maybe they have got tear gas or pepper spray, but no guns, Juna thinks. A few years before police academy, Juna was picked to join the paratroopers' newly formed special ops unit, where he was trained in military Krav Maga with a particular focus on urban warfare and innovative weapon. He still finds himself automatically scanning for potential weapons each time he enters a room. He has already spotted the stainless steel skirting boards and door lintels in the prison. The grooves on the head of the screws have been planed off so they can't be removed with ordinary tools, but the boards have started to drop toward the floor with the passage of time. Maybe the food trolleys have caught on them, or perhaps the floor cleaner. Juna has noticed that some of the skirting boards could be nudged off with his foot. If you wrapped your hands in some cloth, you could pull the whole length of skirting board off. bend it twice, and in 20 seconds create a sort of noose that could be wrapped around an opponent's neck and tightened using the protruding length of metal. Juna remembers the Dutch lieutenant, Rinus Advocat, a senior man with a scared face and dead eyes, who demonstrated that sort of weapon and showed how to control your enemy's movements and basically decapitate him by tightening the noose. He is on his way, Arnie says amiably to Juna. Rocky is walking behind two prison officers. He is wearing pale green prison overall and sandals and has a cigarette tucked behind his ear. Thanks for cutting short your time outside, Juna says, walking toward him. I don't like cages much anyway, Rocky says and clears his throat. Why not? Good question, he replies and shoots Juna an interested glance. You are booked into a monitored interview room. Number 11, Arnie tells Juna, so I will be sitting on the other side of the glass. I remember the crayfish pot when I was little, at night. It is around this time of year, Rocky says. They stop outside the door while Arnie unlocks it. I used to shine my torch at the crayfish and using just the beam, I could force them into the pot, Rocky goes on. Interview room 11 is shabby and contains a table, 4 chairs and an internal phone to summon the prison staff. The legs of the chairs are supposed to be unbreakable, but if you were to lay one of them on the floor, climb up onto the table and jump onto the curved back, the laminate would shatter and you could quickly fashion a sheave, a simple knife out of it, Juna thinks. So the guard can see me through glass, Rocky asks, nodding toward the dark window. It is just a security precaution, but you are not frightened of me, Rocky smiles. No, Juna replies calmly. The thickest priest sits down and his chair creaks beneath him. Have we met before? He asks with a frown. At the zone, Juna says evenly. At the zone, Rocky repeats. Should I know where that is? It was where the police arrested you. Rocky screwed up his eyes and gazes into the distance. I don't remember any of that. They say I had a load of heroin on me, but how could I have afforded that? You don't remember the zone? Sofa zone in Hagdalen. Rocky purses his lips and shakes his head. An industrial unit with lots of sofas and armchairs, prostitutes, people openly dealing heavy drugs, guns. Well, I have got a neurological injury from a car crash. I have trouble remembering things, Rocky explains. I know, but you want me to confess to the drugs offenses. I don't care about that, Juna says, sitting down opposite him. You only have to say it wasn't your jacket, that you picked up a jacket you found on the floor. Neither of them speaks for a short while, and Rocky stretches out his long legs. So you want something else, he says wearily. You have mentioned a person you call the unclean preacher several times. I need your help to identify him. Have I met this preacher? Yes. Is he a priest? I don't know. Rocky scratches his beard and neck. I have no idea, he says after a while. You described how he killed a woman called Natalia Peliova. He chopped her arm off. Juna goes on. A preacher. He was the one who murdered Rebecca Hanson. What the hell are you up to? Rocky roars and stands up suddenly, toppling his chair behind him. I murdered Rebecca Hanson. Do you think I am stupid or something? Rocky back away, stumbles over the overturned chair and almost falls, throws his arm out and plants his large hand on the reinforced glass. The prison officer comes in, but Juna holds up a calming hand towards him as he sees several more guards running along the corridor. We don't believe you did it, Juna says. Do you remember Eric Maria Bark, the hypnotist? Rocky says, licking his lip and brushing his hair back. He's found a woman who can give you an alibi, and I am supposed to believe that? Her name is Olivia, Juna says. Olivia Torbe, Rocky says slowly. You started to remember under hypnosis, and everything suggests that you were convicted of a murder that the preacher committed. Rocky comes closer to him. But you don't know who this preacher is, he asks. No, Juna replies, because everything is locked inside my mashed up brain. Rocky says hollowly. Would you agree to be hypnotized again? Wouldn't you, if you were in my position? He asks and sits down again. Yes, Juna replies honestly. Rocky opens his mouth to say something, but falls silent and puts his hand to his forehead. One of his eyes has started to quiver. The pupil seems to be vibrating, and he leans forward, holding onto the table and breathing hard. Bloody hell, he says after a while and looks up. His forehead is shiny with sweat, and he gazes up at Juna and the prison officers that have entered the room with a look of dreamy bemusement. Chapter 11. Juna stops District Prosecutor Sarah Nelson in the middle of the steps outside the district court on Skilgaton because he can't take Rick with him into the prison. He needs to pursue the prosecutor to release Rocky on bail in advance in his trial. I call you about Curlord, he says, standing in front of her. He can't stay in prison. That is for the district court to decide, she replies. But I don't understand why, Juna persists. Buy a book on Swedish law. A strand of blonde hair blows across Sarah's face, and she brushes it aside with one finger and raises her eyebrows as Juna starts to speak. According to chapter 24, paragraph 20, he says a prosecutor can revoke the decision to remand a suspect in custody if that decision is no longer justified. Bravo, she smiles. But there is a clear risk that Curlud will evade the course of justice and a tangible danger that he would commit further offenses. But we are only talking about minor narcotic offenses, punishable by a year's imprisonment at most, and it is extremely doubtful that possession could even be proven. You said it was in his jacket over the phone, she says in a bright voice, and that the reason for holding him in custody in no way warrants this degree of intrusion into his life. Suddenly it feels like I am standing on the step of the city court holding fresh custody negotiations with a former police officer. I can arrange for supervision, Juna says, following her down the steps. It doesn't work like that, as you well know. I understand that, but he is ill and needs constant medical attention, Juna says. She stops and lets her eyes roam over his face. If Curlode need a doctor, the doctor can come to prison. But if I were to say that this is a particular treatment that can't be carried out in prison, then I would say you were lying. I can get a medical certificate, Juna persisted. Go ahead, but I am pressing charges next Tuesday. I will appeal. Nice try. She smiles and starts walking again. Chapter 12. Juna is sitting on one of the rear pews in Adolf Frederick Church. A girls' choir is rehearsing for a concert up at the front. The choir leader gives them the right note and the teenagers start to sing. Juna sinks into memories of the long, light night in Nadavera after Suma's death. Sunlight floods through the arched windows of the church, mixed the autumn leaves and stained glass. The choir pauses after a few minutes. The girls take out their mobiles, gather in groups and walk through the aisles, chatting as they go. The door to the porch opens and closes quickly. The church warden looks up from her book, then carries on reading. Margot comes in with two heavy plastic bags in her hands. They hit the pew as she squeezes in next to Juna. Her stomach has swollen so much that it presses against the shelf for Hyman book. I really am sorry, Margot says in a half whisper. I know you don't want to believe it, but take a look at this. With a sigh, she lifts one of the bags onto her lap and pulls out a printout showing a fingerprint match. Juna quickly reads through the various parameters of the comparison, then checks the first level details himself and sees the similarities in the lines and patterns. There are 3 perfectly defined fingerprints, and the match with Eric Maria Bark is 100%. Where were the prints found? Juna asked. On the little porcelain deer's head that was in Susanna Kern's hand. Juna gazes out into the nave. The choir is gathering once more. The choir leader claps her hands to get their attention. You asked for evidence before, Margot continued. These fingerprints are evidence, aren't they? In a judicial sense, he says in a low voice. The searches are still going on, she says. We have found our serial killer. Have you? Margot put the bag containing material from the preliminary investigation on Juna's lap. I really wanted to believe you. And the idea of the preacher, she says, leaning back and breathing hard. You should, Juna replies. You met Rocky. I arranged for you to be able to question him, she says, with a hint of impatience. You said you needed to do that before you could find this unclean creature. He doesn't remember anything now because there isn't anything to remember, she concludes. The choir starts singing and the girl's voice fills the church. Margot tries to make herself more comfortable and tucks her plate over her shoulder. You traced Eric to Smaland, Juna says. The rapid response team stormed a charter bus and found his phone tucked between 2 seats. Oops, Juna says dryly. He hasn't put a foot wrong so far. He is staying out of the way, like a professional, she says. It is almost as if he is been given advice about what to do. I agree, Juna says. Has he contacted you? Margot asks. No, Juna replies simply. He looks down at the other bag, still on the floor between them. Is that my pistol? Yes, she replies, pushing the bag toward him with her foot. Thanks, Juna says, gazing down into it. If you carry on looking for the preacher, I have to remind you that you are not doing so on my orders, Margot says, starting to squeeze out of the paw again. You haven't received any material from me, and we never met here. Do you understand? I am going to find the murderer. Juna says quietly, fine, but we can't have any more contact. Juna pulls out his pistol under cover of the paw, ejects the magazine in his lap, pulls the bolt back, checks the mechanism, trigger and hammer, then put the safety catch back on and reinsert the magazine. Who the hell uses a cobalt combat? Margot asked. I would have backache within a week. Jonah doesn't reply, just tucks the pistol into his shoulder holster and slips the spare magazine in his jacket pocket. When are you going to accept that Eric might be guilty? She asked roughly. You will see that I am right, he says, meeting her gaze with icy calmness. Chapter 13. Nellie Bradit is sitting at her computer, typing. Her neatly made up face is blank with concentration as her blonde hair curls softly over her shoulders. She is wearing a beige suit, skirt and a gold polo necked sweater that sits tightly around her body. When Juna comes in and says hello to her, she doesn't answer, just stands up and goes over to the window and picks a deep pink flower from the bush outside. There you go, she says, giving the flower to Juna. With my heartfelt thanks for the magnificent detective work. I can understand that. Hang on, she interrupts. I need to pick another one. She reaches out and picks a second flower and hands it to Juna. For the wall of the Swedish police force, she says. Fucking impressive. No, I am going to have to go out and dig up the wall bush. If you open the boot of your car, then Nellie. I know the police have got it wrong, Juna says. It is as if all the air goes out of her. She sits down at the desk and rests her head on her hands. Tries to say something, but can't get the word out. I am still trying to find the real murderer, Juna goes on. But I need someone who can take over where Eric left off. I would be happy to help, she says, looking up at him. Can you hypnotize people? No, she laughs. Then aback, I thought that is not my area. I actually find it a bit creepy. Do you know anyone who could help me? She twists the engagement ring on her freckled finger a couple of times and tilts her head. Hypnosis is tricky, she says bluntly, but there are a few people with a good reputation. Not that. That is the same thing as being brilliant. It is like a generally applicable algorithm. The reputation of the best people in any field goes down to compensate for brilliance. You mean there is no one as good as Eric? She laughed, flashing her white teeth. Now here, near as good. Even if he is not actually doing much for his reputation right now. Is there someone I could talk to? Anna Palmer here is supposed to be pretty good. It depends that you are after. She hasn't got Eric's experience when it comes to psychological trauma and states of shock, of course. Nellie leads Juna along the corridor, but after a little while she slows down and asks him if she is in danger. I can't answer that, Juna replies honestly. My husband's working late all week. You should ask for police protection. No, not police protection. This is all too much. It is just that we noticed that the lock at the back of the house was damaged yesterday. Have you got someone you can go and stay with? Yes, of course, she says, blushing slightly. Do that until this is over. I will think about it. Chapter 14. Anna Palmer sees Juna in a small book-lined room. There is a desk and a narrow window overlooking the hospital grounds. She is a tall woman with short, lead-grey hair and visible veins beneath her eyes. I know someone who was in a car accident 10 years ago, Juna begins. He suffered fairly severe brain damage. This isn't my area obviously, but the way it is being explained to me, he suffers from ongoing epileptic activity in the temporal lobe of both sides of his brain. That can certainly happen, she says, jotting down that he says. His big problem is his memory, Juna goes on, short and long term. Sometimes he remembers every detail of an event. Sometimes he forgot that it ever took place. I am hoping that hypnosis might help him break through the barrier. Anna Palmer lowers her notepad and folds her hands on the desk. Juna noticed tiny red eczema scabs on her knuckles. I don't want to disappoint you, she says in a weary tone of voice, but a lot of people have unrealistic expectations about what hypnosis can be used for. It is very important for this person to remember, Juna replies. Clinical hypnosis is about making suggestions as a sort of internal self-help, and it's nothing to do with revealing truth, she explains apologetically. But this sort of brain injury doesn't mean that his memory has been erased. It is all there. It is just that the path to it is blocked. I mean, couldn't hypnosis help him to find a different path? It would certainly be possible to get to that point if he were very skillful, he concedes, scratching the red mark on her hands. But what do you do when you get there? No one would be able to differentiate between his real memories and his imagination, seeing as his brain can't tell the difference. Are you sure? I mean, we think we can tell the difference between memory and imagination. We are convinced that we can, because we store certain information together with an awareness that those are genuine memories, like a sort of code, an introductory note, a prefix. So shouldn't that code still be in his brain? Juna persists, but extracting that at the same time as his memories, she says, shaking her head. Is there anyone who could do that? No, she replies, closing her notepad. Eric Maria Bark claims him can. Eric is very good at. He is probably the best person in the world at putting patients into a state of deep hypnosis. But his research isn't evidence-based, she says slowly, and there is a glint of something in her eyes. Do you believe what the papers have been saying about him? I have no way of judging that, but he does have a leaning toward the preserve, the psychiatric. She stops herself. Is this conversation actually about him? She asks bluntly. No, but it is not about a friend of yours, is it? It never is. I am a detective with the National Criminal Investigation Department, and I need to question a witness suffering from organic memory loss. The corners of Anna Palmer's mouth switched. That would be unethical, seeing as anything said under hypnosis is the opposite of reliable and has no place in a legal contest, she says curtly. This is about detective work, not, I can promise you, that no serious practitioner of clinical hypnosis would do this, she says, raising her voice and looking him in the eyes. Chapter 15. Eric walks across the bridge at Sikla with his cap pulled down and his head lowered, then makes his way around the height of Hammer by Beacon, where Benjamin leaned to sky and heads into the forest. It is practically impossible to move in Stockholm without getting caught on camera. There are speed cameras along the roads, cameras monitoring the boundary of the congestion charging zone, traffic surveillance cameras at junctions, tunnels and bridges. There are security cameras in shops, trains, buses, ferries and taxis 24 hours a day. Petrol station, car parks, harbors, terminals, railway station and platform are monitored. Banks, department stores, shopping centers, plazas, pedestrianized streets, embassies, police station, prisons, hospitals, fire station are all watched. Eric is extremely tired and the blisters on the sole of his feet burst as he makes his way through the forest toward Vejerkan. The sky is growing dark and Eric feels his legs shake when he stops in little park behind the house where Nestor, his former patient, lives. Eric follows the path to a wooden door with a tarnished bronze letterbox. The color of the building reminds him of wet foam rubber. There is a light on in the kitchen on the ground floor. From here, he can see right into Nestor's living room. Eric switches windows and sees Nestor sitting in an armchair. There is no sign of anyone else in the flat. Eric's hands are shaking and he feels as though he can't take another step as he rings the front door. Can I come in? He asked as soon as Nestor opened the door. This is unexpected, Nestor mutters. I will put some coffee on. Nestor lets Eric in, closes and locks the door, then disappears inside the flat. Eric takes his shoe off with a sigh, hangs up his crumpled jacket and smells his own sweat. His socks have stuck to his bleeding heels and his cold fingertips are itching in the heat of the hallway. He knows that Nestor lives in the same flat he grew up in. The ceilings are low and the oak parquet floor is so old that the varnish has worn off. There are dog-shaped ornaments everywhere. Eric walks through the living room. The single cushion on the sofa is threadbare and on the low table are a pair of glasses and a crossword. Beside a large figurine of haunting dogs and dead pheasants. In the kitchen, Nestor is setting out cups and a plate of biscuits. There is a frying pan containing sausage and potatoes on the stove. You told me I could ask for a favor. Anything at all, Eric says, sitting down at the table. Yes, Nestor says, nodding empathetically. Can I stay here for a few days? Here? A skeptical, boyish smile flits across Nestor's face. What for? I have had a bit of a row with my girlfriend. Eric lies, leaning back. You have got a girlfriend? Yes, Eric replies. Nestor pours coffee into their cups and says he has a spare room with a guest bed already made up. Could I have some of the food that is left over? Of course, I am sorry, he says, switching the hot plates on. You don't have to warm it up for me, Eric says. Don't you want? No, it is fine. Nectar scraps the food onto a plate and puts it in front of Eric before sitting down opposite him. Have you thought any more about getting a dog? Eric asks. I need to save up some money, Nestor replies, lifting his coffee spoon a millimeter and surreptitiously looking at his reflection. Of course, Eric says as he eats. I work over there at the church, Nestor says, gesturing toward the window. At the church? Eric asks, feeling a shiver spread down his spine. Yes, well, not really, Nestor smiles, holding one hand in front of his mouth. I work in the pet cemetery. A pet cemetery? Eric nods politely, looking at Nestor's slender hands and the yellowing polyester shirt under his pullover. Eric finishes the food and drinks his coffee as he listened to Nestor telling him about the oldest cemetery for domestic pets in Sweden, over on Ridge Garden. It was established when the author August Blanche buried his dog there in the 19th century. I am boring you, Nestor says, getting to his feet. No, I am tired, that is all, Eric says. Nestor goes over to the window and looks out. Black shapes are moving against the paler sky. Trees and bushes blowing back and forth. It will soon be dark, Nestor whispers to his reflection. There are two grey hounds on the windowsill next to a pot plant. Nestor touches their heads out of sight of Eric. Can I use the bathroom? Eric asks. Nestor shows him through the living room and points to an extra door behind a curtain. This is the old caretaker's flat, but I think of that door as an emergency exit, he says. The bathroom has tiles halfway up its wall, with a deep bathtub and a shower curtain with seahorse on it. Eric locks the door and takes his clothes off. The red toothbrush is mother's, Nestor calls through the door. Eric stands on the moldy shower mat in the scratched bathtub, showers and washes the wounds on his body. On top of the bathroom cabinet above the basin is an old light bulb box. Some lipsticks and a mascara pen stick out from it. When Eric emerges, Nestor is standing in the hall waiting for him. His wrinkled face looks worried. I would really like to talk about something. It is something that, he begins. What is it? What do? I do? If the new dog dies? We can talk about that tomorrow. I will show you to the guest room, Nestor whispers, turning his face away. They go back into the living room again, past the kitchen to a closed door that Eric hasn't noticed before because it is on the far side of a cupboard. Above the bed in the spare room is a large poster of Bjorn Borg kissing the Wimbledon trophy. On the wall opposite is a shelf full of porcelain dogs. There is an old corner cupboard painted in traditional folk art style. The top door is decorated with a hand-painted motif, the age of men, from cradle to grave. A man and woman stand beside by side on a bridge where each step represents a decade. On the top step, the pair stand tall as 50-year-old, but death lurks beneath the bridge in the form of a skeleton with a scythe in his hand. That is lovely, Eric says, looking at Nestor, who is still standing in the living room. I sleep in mother's room. I moved in there when Nestor cranes his neck oddly, as if he wanted to look at someone standing behind him. Good night, Eric says. He takes hold of the door handle to close it, but Nestor puts his hand on the door and looks at him with anxious eyes. The rich need it. The poor already have it, but you fear it more than death, Nestor whispers. I am a bit too tired for riddles, Nestor. The rich need it, the poor already have it, but you fear it more than death, Nestor repeats, then licks his lips. I will think about the answer, Eric says, and closes the door. Well, good night. Eric sits down and stares at the hideous wallpaper with its repeated pattern that looks like ornate coats of arms, garlands, peacock feathers, and hundred of eyes. The roller blind is already closed, and he switches the light off and detects a faint smell of lavender as he folds back the heavy corners and gets into bed. He is so exhausted that all his thoughts drift away and lose their shape. He is just about to tumble over the boundary into sleep when he hears a small creaking sound in the room. Someone is trying to open the door quietly. What is it, Nestor? Eric asks. A clue, the soft voice says. I can give you a clue. I am very tired and priestess think it is bigger than God himself. Nestor interrupts. Can you close the door, please? The handle clicks as Nestor let go of it and pads away across the parquet in the living room. Eric falls asleep, and in his dreams little Madeline is standing by his bed, blowing on his face and whispering the answer to Nestor's riddle. Nothing, she whispers, blowing on him. The rich need nothing, the poor have nothing, and you fear nothing more than death. Chapter 16. Eric is pulled from sleep by a breeze on his face. Someone is whispering quickly, but stops the moment he opens his eyes. The darkness is almost impenetrable, and it takes him a few seconds before he realizes where he is. The old horsehair mattress creaks when he rolls over. Even if he was fast asleep, some part of him was alert, a force that yanked him from sleep. Perhaps he just heard water running through the building's pipes, or the wind pressing against the window. No one has been whispering in his room. Everything is still and dark. Eric wonders if this was where Nestor was sleeping when he slipped into psychosis, when the rattling of the pipes turned into voices, into the old woman brushing dandruff from her long grey hair, who told him, you shouldn't look your nearest and dearest in the eye when you kill them. Eric knows it was all about the dog Nestor was forced to put down when he was a child, but he still used to shiver every time Nestor imitated the woman's creaking voice. He thinks of the way Nestor used to sit with his hands clasped in his lap and his head lowered. A little smile would play on his lip and he would flush slightly as he dispensed advice on how to murder a child. The old cupboard creaks and the shadows by the door are hard to interpret. He closes his stinging eyes and goes back to sleep, but wakes up again immediately when the door to the guest room closes. Eric thinks that he is going to have to tell Nestor to leave him alone when he is sleeping, that he doesn't have to keep checking on him, but he can't be bothered to get up now. A car passes on the street outside and its chill light finds its way past the roller blind, slides across the patterned wallpaper and disappears. Eric stares at the wall. It looks like a trace of the light has been left on the wall once the car has gone. He thinks that there must be a weak lamp by the shelf that he hasn't seen before. Eric blinks, stares at the motionless blue light and realizes that there is a peephole between the rooms. The light is coming from the other bedroom. Eric thinks when everything suddenly goes dark, Nestor is looking onto his room right now. Eric lies absolutely still. It is so quiet that he can hear himself swallow. The blue light becomes visible again and he can hear intense whispering through the wall. Eric quickly gets dressed in the darkness and moves closer to the light. The point of light is between the two lower shelves of the bookcase. The little hole would be invisible if the porcelain animals were arranged differently. It is positioned in the very darkest part of the pattern on the wallpaper, so small that he realizes he is going to have to press his face to the wall and put his eye right next to the hole to be able to see anything. He moves a porcelain puppy in a basket, leans his hands on the wall and carefully puts his head between the shelves, feeling the wood against his hair and the wallpaper touching the tip of his nose. When he is right next to the hole, he can see straight into the next room. There is a mobile phone on the bedside table. The screen is lit up, illuminating the alarm clock and the oval pattern of the wallpaper. Eric manages to catch a glimpse of the neatly made bed and a framed photograph of a young child in a christening gown. Before the light from the phone goes out, he hears rapid footsteps somewhere in the flat and tries to pull his head back, but his hair catches on a splinter in the wood. The porcelain figures tingle ominously. Eric puts his hand up and tries to free his hair as the door opens behind him. He pulls his head out and hears the figurine on the shelf rattle. Nestor comes toward him and he backs away. I have called the police. I came back to tell you. Nestor whispers, it is your turn to get help now. I have spoken to them several times. They are here now. Nestor, you don't understand, Eric says formally. No, you don't understand. Nestor interrupts in a friendly voice and switches on the lamp in the window. I said it is your turn to get medicine, and there is a sudden noise like a stone hitting the window. The dark roller blind quivers in the light from the lamp and a cascade of glass falls down behind the blind and tingled over the radiator. Nestor lurches. He's been shot right through his body with a high velocity weapon Blood sprays out of the exit hole in his shoulders. He looks at the blood in surprise. They promised. He stumbled, falls onto his hip and looks up with a confused expression. Get out through the extra door, he hisses. Go down into the laundry room, straight through, and you will be in the next building. He puts his knuckles on the floor as if to push himself up. Lie down, Eric whispers. Just lie flat. Run across the schoolyard, then follow the church wall to the forest and the pet cemetery. Lie still, Eric repeats, then runs at a crouch toward the door. When he reaches the living room, he hears Nestor's front door being forced open. There is a crash and splinters and pieces of metal from the lock clatter across the floor. Hide in the little red house, Nestor gasps behind him. Eric turns round and sees that Nestor has stood up to point the glass in front of Bijon. Bog's smiling face explode and the echo of a shot resound between the building. Nestor is holding one hand against the side of his neck as a torrent of blood pulses out between his fingers. Three of the flat's windows shatter and a distraction. Grenades explode, flashing with such ferocity that time seems to stand still. Eric staggers backward. The silence is like a sandy beach, slow waves rolling, then pull back with a crackle. He feels his way through the living room, unable to see anything but the freeze-frame image of the bedroom with Nestor's silhouette against the window and the drops of blood hanging in the air in front of the cupboard door with death hiding under a bridge. Eric's hearing has been knocked out, but he feels further blasts as waves of pressure against his chest. He walks straight into the battered sofa and feels his way along its back. Then the shock lifts, his eyes are working again, and he makes his way round the table and magazine rack. But he is still as giddy, as if he were very drunk. Lights from guns sweep round the hall and kitchen. His ears start to ring, but he still can't hear anything around him. He locates the extra door behind the curtain, unlocks it and creeps out into the back stair wall. He almost trips over the first step but grabs hold of the handrail. He makes his way downstairs on unsteady feet, then walks until he reaches a metal door and finds himself in the laundry room. He feels his way along the wall until his fingers make contact with the light switch, turns the light on and hurries past washing machine, trolleys and bins full of empty bottles as he tries to remember what Nestor said. His head feels strangely detached, as if none of this really concerned him. His temporary blindness lingers as silvery spot. Any light source stronger than 5 million candles activate all the photocells in the eye, meaning that everything you see after being dazzled seems to happen slightly out of sync. At the end of the long corridor is a door, and he runs up a narrow flight of steps and finds himself in a different stairwell. Eric walks out into the cool night air. There are no emergency vehicles on his side of the block. Presumably, the rapid response unit are some distance away. Eric hurries through the little park in the cold. He can feel that one of his ears is wet. He touches his cheek and realizes that he is bleeding. Without looking around, he walks Straight across curls run a wagon and past a car park and some dirty recycling bins. Broken glasses crunches beneath his feet. The tarmacked schoolyard is empty. A beer can rolls in the wind. The basketball hoop on their posters have no nets. High above a helicopter is approaching. The clatter of the rotors audible across the rooftops, and Eric realizes that his hearing is starting to come back. He walks on, more slowly, gasping for breath, then creeps round the building and in amongst the trees. It is almost pitch black here. Eric holds his hands out in front of his face to protect himself from branches until he sees the low church wall. Fear is beginning to catch up with him as he follows the wall through tall nettles. Deep within the forest, there is a sudden concentration of tiny graves decorated by children. He sees headstones with dogs' collars hanging off them, graves with sleazy toys, drawings, photographs, and flowers, homemade crosses or painted stones, burned out candles, and sooty lanterns. Chapter 17. It is past 2 o'clock in the morning, but Juna is standing in the middle of his room at the Hotel Hanson. The floor is covered with photographs from the crime scene and post-mortem. Because Eric's house is out of bounds for the duration of the search, the police have sent him to the hotel. His jacket and pistol are lying on the untouched bed. He's had a Caesar salad in his room. The remains are under the shiny metal dome on the low coffee table. As Juna reads the forensic expert's analysis of the crime scenes, he compares them with the pictures, post-mortem reports, and test results from the National Forensic Laboratory. Rocky's nightmares were genuine. Memories, everything be said under hypnosis was true. The same murderer has returned. The unclean preacher has stalked, killing again. After the murder of Rebecca Hanson, the serial killer went into long cooling off period. He waited in a state of cold storage until the next escalation began. For a stalker, following someone is like a drug addiction. It is impossible to stop. He has to get closer, make contact, give gifts, and as time passes, develops a real relationship with them inside his own head. Outwardly, he can exhibit submissive gratitude, but in actual fact, he is extremely resentful and jealous. The police have a list of almost 700 names who fit the basic outline of the perpetrator profile: bishops, pastors, priests, and members of their families, deacons, church warden, caretakers, undertakers, preachers, and faith healers. Juna believes that the perpetrator is intentionally trying to make it look like Eric is guilty of the murders, but he can't find any connection between Eric and any of the men on the list. What Juna is looking for now among the reports and analysis is something definite that will allow him to cross most of the names of the list. There is nothing that stands out in the material, but perhaps different elements could be combined in an unexpected way. Juna tries separating the pieces of the puzzle and seeing if there are other ways of putting them together. He walks across the pictures of the deer's head and a tub of melted ice cream and stop in front of the photograph of Sandra Lundgren's murder weapon. The stained knife was photographed where it was found, on the floor beside her dead body. The flash from the camera shimmers like a dark sun in the brown blood. He reads that it is a chef's knife with a stainless steel blade that is 20 centimeters long, and then examines Eric's careful sketches attempting to reconstruct the brutal process of the attack from blood traces and spatter patterns. The perpetrator has worn the same footwear each time. During Woods, size 43, Juna tries to identify clues that have been missed, things that doesn't match the overall picture. He pores over picture after picture and stops in front of a photograph with the number 311, a blue pottery fragment that resembles a bird's skull with white bubbles along one edge and a sharp point that is smooth as ice. He leaps forward to the item in Eric's report and reads that it was tucked between the cracks in Sandra's floor and was only found when low-level light was shone across the floor. According to the laboratory analysis, the tiny 2 mm long fragment consists of glass, iron, sand and shammered clay. Juna moves to the report from Adam Yusuf's home. In spite of the gunfire, the murderer chose to go through with his plan, and according to the preliminary report, Katrina was missing the false fingernails from both her hands. The preacher takes trophies, then marks the places he's taken them from with the victim's hands, like a judgment in a trial. At 3:15, Anja Larson calls to say that she has just been informed about an immediate operation. The police have received a tip-off that is regarded as highly credible. A man claims that Eric is sleeping in the spare room in his flat. Eric had been his psychiatrist some years ago. The man has been told to leave the flat. Who is leading the operation? Juna asked Daniel Frick. He is one of the Adam's best friends. I understand what you are saying, Anja says, but I don't think there is anything to worry about because this operation is still being led by the National Response Unit. Juna goes over to the window and looks down at the hire car he is left parked on the pavement rather than in the hotel's garage. It is a gunmetal grey Porsche with 6 cylinders and 560 horsepower. Where is the flat? Because everyone knows that I am loyal to you. Margot has decided that I should be kept outside the current investigation. And she's got a point, because if I know the address, I would tell you. Anja doesn't know where the operation is going to take place, but she is worked out that it must be somewhere south of Stockholm. She says the response unit has been given permission to use pump-action shotguns, assault rifles, repeaters and PSG-90 sniper rifles. After the call, Juna stands and gazes at the floor of the hotel room. Hundreds of pictures lined up in rows from wall to wall, with the floor lamp reflecting off the blurry surface of the photographs. He carries on reading Erickson's crime scene analysis, but his mind keeps wandering to Eric and the impending operation. Juna walks to the other side of the room, looks at the picture of a fragment of yellow fiber, then reads a lab report about a piece of trampled leaf left on the kitchen floor in Maria Carlson's home. It turned out to be a fragment of stinging nettle. He looks at the enlargement on the photograph. The tiny place of leaf fills the whole sheet of paper like a spiky green tongue. The hairs look like crystal needles or fragile pipettes. Dawn comes and sky in the east grows paler. Narrow streaks of sunlight filter past chimneys and gables over the roofs and copper ornaments of Wasaston. The operation must be over by now, Juna thinks, and calls Eric on his new phone. He tries a second time but gets no answer, even though it is only 5:30 in the morning. He decides to call Margot. He has to know if they have caught Eric, but can't ask straight out about the operation because he doesn't want to get Anja in trouble. Have you managed to arrest an innocent suspect yet? Then, Juna, I am asleep, I know, but what is going on? What is going on? You are not actually allowed to ask, but a former patient of Eric's called and said that Eric was in his flat. She replies in a tired voice, Can I have a name? Confidential. I can't talk to you. I told you that. Just say if it is something I ought to know about. The patient told the police he had left Eric alone in the flat. The National Response Unit went in, saw an armed man and shot live ammunition. It turned out that the person in the window was the patient who had returned to the flat, and Eric wasn't there. He can hear her trying to sit up in bed. We don't even know if we had been there at all, and the patient's on an operating table right now and can't be interviewed. Or what if he is the preacher? Juna interrupts. Eric's guilty, but maybe the patient knows where he is. We will question him as soon as we can. You should station armed guards at the hospital. Juna, we have found blood in Eric's car. It might not mean anything, but it is been sent for analysis. Have you looked for a set of yellow rain-cloths in the patient's flat? We didn't find anything special, she replies. Are there stinging nettles outside the flat? No, I don't think so, she says in a bemused tone. Chapter 18. Juna sits down on a chair for the first time in several hours and reads more about killer steps in Sandra Landgren's flat, looks at the stretches and thinks that there is something unusually agitated and frenetic about the murders. They are planned, but they aren't rational. Juna compares this with the post-mortem report's description of theatrical aggression, but can't help thinking that the degree of controlled preparation is actually a disguise and that the aggression itself is the perpetrator's natural state. He is about to make a note to investigate the medical history of Eric's former patient when his phone rings. Juna, it is me, Eric whispers. They tried to kill me. I was hiding out at Nestor's. He is an old patient of mine. The police must have thought it was me. They could see in the window. They shot him twice. It was like an execution. I didn't think the police in Sweden could do something like that. It is completely insane. Are you somewhere safe now? Yes, I think so. You know, he only came back to tell me that what he had done, to say that the police had promised not to hurt me, and then they shot him through the window. Has it occurred to you that he could be the preacher? He isn't, Eric replies instantly. What was his problem? Then he was. Juna, that doesn't matter. I just want a trial. I don't care if they convict me. I can't stay. Eric, I don't think I am being monitored, but doesn't tell me where you are. Juna interrupts. I only want to know how long you can stay hidden where you are. The phone crackles as Eric moves. I don't know. 24 hours maybe, he whispers. There is a tap here, but nothing to eat. Are you likely to be found? There is probably not much risk of that, Eric replies, then falls silent. Eric, I don't understand how I could have ended up in this situation, he says quietly. Everything I have done has only made things worse. I am going to find the preacher, Juna says. It is too late for that. It is too late for everything now. I just want to give myself up without being killed. Juna can hear Eric's agitated breathing down the phone. If we manage to hand you over and keep you alive in prison, these crimes carry a life sentence, Juna says. But I don't think I would be convicted. I can hypnotize Rocky before the trial. They would never let you do that. No, maybe not. But I went to see Rocky. Juna says he is in Hiding prison for possession of drugs. He remembered you, but nothing about the son or the preacher. It is hopeless, Eric says. Juna leans against the window and feels the cool glass against his forehead. Down in the street, a taxi stops outside the hotel. The driver's face is grey with tiredness as he walks around the car to take the luggage out. Juna glances down at his hair car, watches the taxi drive off, and when he looks up again, he is made up his mind. I will try to find a way of getting Rocky out today, and then we will meet up so you can hypnotize him, he says. Is that your plan? Eric asked. You said you could unearth specific details about the preacher if you were able to hypnotize Rocky again. Yes, I can. I am pretty sure of that. In that case, I will be able to find the real killer while you stay in hiding. I just want to hand myself in and you will be found guilty if it goes to trial. That is ridiculous. I just happen to be nearby when. It is not just that, Juna interrupts. Your fingerprints were on an object found in Susanna Kern's hand. What object? Eric asked in astonishment. Part of a porcelain animal. I don't get it. That doesn't mean anything to me. But the fingerprint match is 100%. Juna hears Eric walk up and down. It sounds as though he is walking across a wooden floor. So everything points at me, he says in a low voice. Have you got a picture of Nestor? Eric tells him how to log into the medical record of the psychology clinic before they end the call. Juna puts his pistol and jacket on, then goes down to reception to get a printout of Nestor's picture before leaving the hotel room again. He walks past his hire car and turns into the much narrower Frigaten. Outside one of the doorway stands an old Volvo, the sort with no ignition lock. Jonah looks round quickly. The street is completely deserted. He takes a step back, then kicks in the rear side window. The alarm of a car further down the street goes off. Juna opens the front door from the inside, moves the seat back, pulls his screwdriver out of his pocket, prises off the cover around the ignition and loosens the panel on the steering column. He leans over and inserts the screwdriver into the upper part of the column and carefully breaks the steering lock. Quickly, he pulls on a pair of gloves, gets in the driving seat, loosens the red cable on the ignition cylinder and peels back their plastic covering. As soon as he twists the ends together, music starts to play on the radio and the inside light comes on. He shuts the door, pulls out the brown wires and puts them together, and the engine starts. The streets aren't yet full of cars as he drives out to Hadinge. A plastic rosary hangs off the rear view mirror. There are already lorries on the road, but the commuters are still drinking coffee in their homes. In Hadinge, he drives past the imposing prison building and carries on south, pulls onto a track leading into the forest, turns the car round, parks, then starts walking back toward Stockholm. Chapter 19. Junalina gets out of the taxi on Suburban-Gatton, pays and walks across the street to his grey hire car. The engine starts with a gentle hum. He leans back in the leather seat and pulls away from the curb. Then he reaches Hadinge prison. He parks right in front of the entrance next to a metal fence and calls Eric's number. How are you getting on? He asks. Okay, but I am starting to get hungry. I have changed my SIM card, so you can tell me where you are now. Behind St. Mark's Church, outside the wall, there is a pet cemetery in the woods. I am hiding in a red wooden shed that is fairly close to the police raid on Nestor's flat, isn't it? Yes, I heard the ambulance last night, Eric says quickly. I will bring Rocky out to you an hour from now, Juna says, glancing up at the imposing edifice of the prison. He puts his pistol and mobile in the glove compartment, leaves the key in the ignition and then gets out of the car and walks in through the tall pillars. He buys 3 sandwiches at the kiosk, asks for a bag and then goes over to say why he is there. After going through the usual security procedure, Juna is shown inside the prison. The same prison officer as before is standing waiting for him. Juna notes that Ernie has a telescopic baton from Benove. It is made of sprung steel and designed to hit the muscles in the upper arm and thighs. His name badge sits slightly crookedly on his filled NATO sweater. His handcuffs are dangling from his belt at the base of his broad back. In the lift, Ernie takes off his glasses and polishes them on his sweater. How is the fishing? Juna asks. I am heading to Oscar-wilde with my brother-in-law later this autumn. The interview room is one of the monitored rooms in which one wall consists of a pane of glass, making it possible for people in the next room to observe everything going on inside. Juna sits down on a chair and waits with both hands resting on the tabletop until he hears voices approaching along the corridor. He is called the naked chef because he was naked when he started, the duty officer is saying, as the door opens and Rocky is led into the room. No, Arnie says, that is not right. My wife and I saw Jamie Oliver at the book fair in the Gothenburg 15 years ago. He was completely naked, stood there making Spaghetti Ali won't goal. My shoulders hurt, Rocky sighs. Just keep quiet, Ernie says, pushing him down onto a chair. Give me a scribble and he is all yours, the duty officer says as they leave the room. Chapter 20. Rocky looks paler today and his dark patches under eyes. He is probably suffering from withdrawal. Ernie Melander sits in the adjoining room watching them, but he can't hear what they are saying. The soundproof glass wall is intended to protect the confidentiality of conversation between defense lawyers and their clients, but also to allow the police to question suspects without the contents of their conversations leaking out. They say they can keep me locked up in this fucking place for 6 months, Rocky says in a gruff voice, rubbing under his nose. You had talked about a preacher, Juna says in a final attempt to avoid putting his plan into action. I have problem with my memory after. I know, Juna interrupts, but I try to remember the preacher. You saw him kill a woman called Tina. That is possible, Rocky says, his eyes narrowing. He chopped off her arm with a machete. You do remember that? I don't remember anything, Rocky whispers. Do you know someone called Nestor? I don't think so. Look at this picture, Juna says, handing him the printout. Rocky studies Nestor's thin face carefully, then nods. He was in Curzon, I think. Did you know him? I don't know. There were different sections. Are you prepared to meet Eric Maria Burke and let herself be hypnotized? Okay, Rocky says with a shrug. The problem is that the prosecutor is refusing to let you out, Juna says slowly. Eric can always come and hypnotize me here. That isn't possible because the police think Eric carried out the murders. Eric? But he is an innocent, as you were. Vanitas vanitatum, Rocky says with a broad smile. Eric found Olivia. Whoa. I know. I go down on my knees and thank him every evening. But what do you expect me to do about it? We are leaving together, you and me, Juna replies calmly. I will take one of the guards hostage and all you have to do is come along with me. Hostage? We will be out in 7 minutes. Long before the police get here. Rocky looks at Juna, then at Ernie sitting behind the glass. I will do it if I can have my wraps back, Rocky says, leaning back and stretching his legs. What sort of heroin was it? Juna asked. White, from Nimrose. But Kandahar would do fine. I will sort it, Juna says, taking a flattened roll of duct tape from his pocket. With his eyes half closed, Rocky watches the former police officer wrap the heavy-duty tape around his hands. I am sure you know what you are doing, Rocky says. Bring the bag of sandwiches, Juna says, pressing the button on the intercom to indicate that the meeting is over. A few moments later, Ernie opens the door and lets Juna out into the corridor. The idea is for him to lead Juna out of the prison, then take Rocky back to his cell. While the prison officer locks Rocky inside the interview room, Juna goes over to the other door where the bottom of the skirting board has come loose. He leans down, slips his fingers into the gap and pulls upwards. The screws spring free from the concrete wall along with their brown plastic roll plug. You can't do that, Ernie exclaims. Scrums of cement rain down on the floor as Juna yanks up the skirting board. The top screws are stuck and Juna jerks hard, twisting the metal until there is a bang as the last screws come loose. Are you listening? Arnie says, drawing his baton. I am talking to you. Juna takes no notice of him. He holds the skirting board out in front of him, stamps down hard with his foot, bends down and turns it, then stamps again. What the hell are you doing? Arnie asks with a nervous smile, coming closer. I am sorry, Juna says simply. He knows what sort of training Arnie Melander was received and that he is going to approach with his left hand outstretched, trying to hold him off while he attempts to strike Juna on the thigh and upper arm with sweeping movements of the baton. Juna moves down him with long strides, knocks his arm away and then lands his elbow in the heavy man's chest, making him stagger back. His knees give way, but he puts out a hand to support himself and manages to sit down on the floor. Juna stumbles forward from the momentum of the blow, but stays on his feet and snatches the prison officer's alarm from him before he has time to react. He cuts his lower arm as he puts the bent part of the skirting board around Arnie's neck, then pulls the handcuffs from his belt and attaches one cuff to the point where the ends of the skirting board intersect. Stand up and let Rocky out, he says. Arnie cuff and turn round heavily, crawls to the wall and lean against it as he gets to his feet. Unlock the door. Arnie's hands are free, but Juna is steering him from behind with the protruding ends of the skirting board. His neck is trapped in the noose-like bend, the sharp edge of the metal pressing against his neck. Don't do this, Arnie pants. Sweat is running down his face and his hands are shaking as he unlocks the door of the interview room. Rocky comes out, picks up the baton and presses it on the floor to make it contract again. Ernie, if you help us, we will be out in 4 minutes and then I will let you go, Juna says. The prison officer limps ahead of Juna and keeps trying to slip his fingers under the metal noose. Use your passcard and type in the code, Juna says, steering him toward the lift. As they travel down through the building, Arnie holds one hand against the mirror and keeps looking up at the camera in the hope that someone will see him. The metal has already cut through one layer of the duct tape around Juna's hands. When they emerge into the lobby, it takes just a matter of seconds before the rest of the prison staff realize what is going on. Like a pressure wave, the atmosphere goes from relaxed to intense. Some sort of silent alarm has evidently been activated. A light is flashing beneath one desk and a prison officer who had been sitting talking moments before hurry to their feet. Chairs scrap the floor. Papers fall to the ground. Let us go through, Juna calls, steering Arnie toward the exit. 7 guards are approaching anxiously from the corridor. They are clearly having trouble reading the situation and Juna tells Rocky to watch his back. Rocky extends the baton again and walks backward behind Juna toward the airlock. The officer who was sitting in the security command center hurries over. His task now is so slow. Things down and delay the escape for as long as possible. I can't let you out, he says. But if you give ourselves up, then look at your colleague. Juna interrupts. Arnie whimpers as Juna pulls the end of the metal outwards. The noose tightened around his neck and blood started to trickle down his dark sweater. He tries to hold the metal back with his hands, but stands no chance. Stop, the security officer yells. For God's sake, stop. Arnie stumbles sideways into a display of information for visitors, sending brochures falling to the ground around him. I will let him go when we get outside, Juna says. Okay, everyone move back, the security officer says. Let them through, let them go. They pass through the bleeping metal detector. Prison officers and other staff get out of the way. One officer is recording everything on his mobile phone. Forward, Juna says. Arnie whimpers quietly as they approach the exit. Oh God, he whimpers, holding his left arm. A dog is barking frantically on the other side of the security airlock as guards rush outside the glass doors to get into formation. Let them through, the security officer calls, following them out through the airlock. I will come with you. Make sure you get out. He pulls out his card, taps in the code and opens the door. Who the hell are you really? He gasped, looking at Juna Lina. Outside the prison, the sun is shining. The sky is a radiant blue above them as they walk across the paved entrance area toward Juna's grey porch. Juna walks round the vehicle and pushes Arnie to the ground and apologizes as he fastens the other handcuff to the metal fence behind the car. The security officer stands and watches them as the prison guard mill about inside the glass door only a dozen meters away from them. Juna gets in quickly and starts the car. Before Rocky has time to close the door, he drives over the curb, down the grass slope, past the cement blocks and out onto the road, where he accelerates hard towards the forest where the old Volvo is waiting. Chapter 21. Nestor was taken to the Karolinska University Hospital in Hadding, where a team operated on him and managed to stop the bleeding. Nestor was lucky. His condition is already stable and he is being moved from the intensive care unit. Margot has put two uniformed officers outside the post-operative care unit. Nestor is conscious again, but in a state of severe shock. He is being given extra oxygen through a tube in his nose, and the saturation of his blood is under constant monitoring. A pleural drain has been inserted above his diaphragm, and bubbly blood is running out through the tube. Nellie has spoken to Nestor's consultant and has suggested a low-level sedative out of consideration for his medical history. Nestor cries the whole time. Margot tries to explain the chain of events from the police point of view up to the storming of his flat. But Eric wasn't there. So, where was he? She asked. I don't know. Nestor sobs. Why did you call and say that? Nestor, you have to understand that none of what happened is your fault. It was just an accident, Nellie says, holding his hand. Has Eric been in touch with you at all? Margot asks. I don't know, he repeats, staring past her. Of course, you know. I don't want to talk to you, he says quietly and turns his face away. What line of work are you in? Margot asks, taking a hum sandwich out of her large bag. I am retired, but I do a bit of gardening work. Where? For the council. Different places, he says. Do you have a lot of trouble with the weeds? Margot asked. Not really, he says, looking curious. Staining? Nettles? No, he says, speaking at a tube. Nestor, Nellie says gently, you have probably worked out what Eric and I are going friends. And like you, I think it would be best for him to hand himself into the police. Tears well up in Nestor's eyes again, and Margot goes over to the window so she doesn't have to watch him cry. I am riddled with bullets, he says in a loud voice, and puts his hand on top of the bandage covering the wound in his chest. It was a terrible accident, Nellie says. God wants to kill me, he says, pulling the oxygen tube from his nose. Why do you think that? I can't bear it, he whimpers. You know, the Joes say that righteous man can fall 7 times and get up again, but the ungodly stumble when calamity strikes, and you are going to get up. Am I righteous? How should I know? She smiles. That is what you mean, isn't it? Nellie can see that the oxygenation of his blood is falling and reattaches the tube to his nose. Eric saved him, and I just wanted to save him, he whispers. Yesterday, you mean? She asked tentatively. He came to me and I gave him food and lodging, he says, and coughed lightly. They promised not to hurt him. How did he look when he came to you? He had an ugly cap on and his hand was bleeding. He was dirty and unshaven and had scratches on his face. And you just wanted to help him, Nellie says. Yes, he nods. Margot is standing by the window, eating her sandwich, but can still hear Nestor's careful answers. His description of Eric fits someone who ran off through the forest and has been sleeping rough. Do you know where Eric is now? She asks slowly, turning round. No. Margot meets Nellie's gaze, then leaves the room to set a large-scale police operation in motion. I am starting to get tired, he says. It is a bit early for the medicine to take effect. Are you Eric's girlfriend? Nestor asked, looking at her. What did Eric say before he left? Nellie asked, but can't help smiling. Do you think he is planning to give himself up? You mustn't be angry with Eric. I am not. My mother says he is bad, but she can just shut up, I think. Get some rest now. He is the nicest man you could get, Nestor goes on. I think so too. She smiles and pats his hand. We meet sometimes, but you can't see me, Nestor says. You can't hear me, and you can't smell me. I was born before you, and I will be waiting for you. When you die, I can embrace you, but you can't hold on to me. Darkness, she replies. Good God, Nestor nods. If a man carries my burden, he would. Nestor closes his eyes and gasps for breath. I am going to go home now, Nellie says quietly, and carefully gets up from the edge of the bed. When she leaves the post-operative care unit, she notices that the police officers are no longer guarding the door. Chapter 22. The bell in St. Mark's Church is ringing under an open sky. The wheel turns, pulling the great bell with it. The heavy clapper hits the metal and the peal reaches across the wall of the churchyard, in amongst the trees, all the way to the buried animals. The dirty single pane of glass in the window of the shed where Eric is hiding rattles. The red shack in the pet's cemetery consist of thin timber wall and a stained chipboard floor. Presumably, there would once have been a plastic mat on the floor. The shed may have been used by local cemetery workers before everything was streamlined. In recent years, only Nestor has been here as the solitary but conscientious guardian of the animal's last resting place. On one wall, there is a cold water tap above a large zinc trough. Eric has moved 5 sacks of compost and lined them upon the floor to form a bed. He is lying on his side listening to the church bell. The smell of earth around him is pervasive, as if he was already lying in his grave. Who can understand their own faith? He thinks, watching the morning light shine in through the grey curtain and wander slowly across the sack of grass, seed and grit, spades and shovels, then down across the floor to an axe with a rusty blade. His gaze lingers on the axe, staring at the blunt edge with its deep indentations, and thinks that Nestor must use it to chop off roots when he is digging graves. He turns on his bed, trying to get more comfortable. He spent the first few hours curled up in the corner behind the sacks. He had cut his thigh on a sharp branch, heard a ringing sound in his ears, felt nauseous and was shaking all over. The ambulance siren died away. The helicopter disappeared and silence enveloped the little shed. After a few hours, he began to feel a bit safer, dared to stand up and went over to the tap, where he drank some cold water and washed his face. The water splashed up onto a plastic sleeve that had been pinned to the wall. The drips ran down a price list from the Association of Stockholm Pet Cemeteries onto the discolored chipboard. He called Juna and told him what had happened, aware of how incoherent and repetitive he sounded, and realized that he was in shock. He lay back down on the sacks but couldn't sleep. His heart was beating far too fast. His ear has stopped bleeding now, but he is still humming, as though he were hearing everything through a piece of thin fabric. Gradually, the jagged, dazzling halo of light fades and he closes his eyes. He thinks about Jackie and Madeline and hears children's voice in the distance. He creeps over to the window. They are probably playing in the wood behind the school. Eric has no idea what he had do if they come over here. His face could be on the front pages of all the papers today. A wave of anxiety washes through him, leaving him feeling utterly chilled. Spider's webs still when he slides the curtain aside a few more centimeters. The pet cemetery is a beautiful place, lots of grass and deciduous trees. A small path leads away from the church and over a wooden bridge lined by tall stinging nettles. On one grave, a number of round stones form a cross, and a child has made a lantern out of a jam jar with red hearts painted around outside. The candle is just visible beneath the rainwater and fallen seeds. Eric thinks about his conversation with Juna again. He knows he can find his way into Rocky's memories if he gets the chance. He is already hypnotized him, but he wasn't looking for the preacher then. But how long can he stay here? He is hungry, and sooner or later Someone is going to find him. He is far too close to the school, the church and Nestor's flat. He swallows hard, gently touches the wound in his leg, and tries again to work out how his fingerprints could have ended up in Susanna Kern's home. There has to be a simple explanation, but Juna seems to think that they are dealing with an attempt to make him look guilty of the murders. The thought is so ridiculous that he can't take it seriously. There has to be a rational explanation. I am not afraid of the trial. Eric thinks the truth will come out if I can just have a chance to defend myself. He has to hand himself in. Eric thinks he could seek refuge in the church. He could ask the priest for communion, for God's forgiveness, anything at all, as long as he gets shelter. The police can't shoot me in a church, he thinks. He is so tired that tears come to his eyes at the thought of giving himself up and putting his faith in someone else's hand. He decided to creep out and see if the church is open, but then he hears someone crossing the little wooden bridge that leads to the pet cemetery. Eric ducks down quickly and goes and sits in the corner where he did to start with. Someone is walking along the path, groaning oddly to himself. There is a tingling sound, as though whoever it is had kicked over the homemade lantern on the grave. The footsteps stop and everything goes silent. Perhaps he is putting flowers on a dog's grave. Perhaps he is listening for sound inside the shed. Eric sits in the corner, thinking about the dog that Nestor was forced to drown. In his mind's eye, he sees the flailing legs, the animal's attempt to swim as the sack filled with water. The man outside spits noisily and carries on walking. Eric hears him come closer, walking through the dead bushes, their thin branches snapping under his shoes. He is right outside the shed now, Eric thinks, looking around for a weapon, glancing at the spade, then the axe with the short handle and blunt blade. Something starts trickling down the wall of the shed, splashing the tall grass. The man outside is urinating, slurring to himself as he does so. You do your best, a deep voice mutters. You come home, nice and quiet, but nothing is good enough anymore. The man lurches over to the window and peers in. The grass scraps and his shadow falls across the wall with the spade and shovels. Eric presses himself against the wall next to the window, clearly hearing man's breathing, first with his mouth open, then through tight nostrils. Honest work, he mutters and carries on through the low-growing blueberry bushes. Eric thinks that he is going to have to wait for the drunk to disappear before going to the church and handling himself in. He tries again to imagine that Nestor is the killer, but he can't honestly believe that Nestor is driven by a compulsion to turn himself into the arbiter of life or death. The sun goes behind a cloud and the grey curtain loses its transparency again. On a shelf stands a dusty thermos flask with a plastic bag tucked between it the wall, a little grey urn and a painted plaster bulldog. Eric just has time to see Nestor's shaving mirror quiver on the wall, sending a glint of a reflection across the floor before the door of the shed swings open. Chapter 23. Eric scrambles backward and a green folding chair clatters over into the floor. The opening door hits the wall, then bounces back and hits a very large shoulder. Dust is swirling around the bulky figure, who is panting as he makes his way into the shed. Rocky curled cuffs and hits his head on the dangling light bulb. He is dressed in prison issue clothing. His face is sweaty and his hair is hanging pale and grey around his big head. Juna comes in right behind him, shut the door and stop the swaying bulb with his hand. Vidyasia, Juna says. Eric tries to say something, but he can barely. Vidyasia, Juna says. Eric tries to say something, but he can barely breathe. When the floor flew open, he got so scared that his cheeks felt like they were burning. Rocky mutters something to himself, picks up the folding chair and sits down. He is out of breath. Vedasya, Juna says. Eric tries to say something, but he can barely breathe. When the door flew open, he got so scared that his cheeks felt like they were burning. Rocky mutters something to himself, picks up the folding chair and sits down. He is out of breath as he glances round the little room. You came, Eric says in a weak voice. We made our way through the forest from Naka-Gad, Juna says, taking 3 cheese and salad bagels out of a bag. They eat in silence. Rocky is sweating from withdrawal and breathing hard between mouthful. When he is finished, he goes over and drinks some water from the tap. It is more expensive to bury people, he says, gesturing towards the price list. Drops of water glisten in his beard. Shadows dance behind the curtain. I think we are fairly safe here, Juna says, removing the last of the duck tap from his hand. The operation has already been downguarded. Externally, they are claiming that they received inaccurate information because Nestor wanted to commit suicide. But he is still alive, isn't he? Yes, Juna replies, meeting Eric's gaze. His blonde hair is sticking up and his eyes have regained the chilly blue of an October sky. Eric chews the last of the bread. If this doesn't work, I thought I would hand myself over inside the church, he says, trying to keep his voice steady. Good, Juna replies quietly. They can't shoot me inside a church, he adds. No, they can't, Juna replies, even though they both knew it isn't true. Rocky is standing by the price list, smoking, muttering to himself and picking the little plastic cap off the top of the drawing pins. I am ready to start, Eric tells him, crumbling the wrapper of his sandwich into a ball. Sure, Rocky nods and sits down on the chair. Eric looks at him, his dilated pupils, the color of his face. Listen to his breathing. I have marched through the woods. Your body is still working hard, he says. Maybe it won't work then, Rocky asks, stubbing his cigarette out with his foot. I would like to start with some relaxation. The fact that the brain is active is no problem. You are not supposed to be asleep after all. All we want to do is gather all that activity and focus. Okay, Rocky says, leaning back. Sit comfortably, Eric goes on. You can change position as much as you like during the hypnosis. You don't need to worry about that, but each time you move, you will sink deeper into a state of relaxation. Juna and Eric know that this is their chance, the opportunity they have been waiting for. They don't need much just a name, a location, or some other definite detail. If they can only come up with one defined parameter, the pattern that is already emerged will refine itself to an arrow pointing straight at the preacher. Eric can't force the process and needs to take his time, leading Rocky into a very deep trance in order to reach the most inaccessible memories. Rest your hand on your lap, Eric goes on in a quiet voice. Clench them tight, then relax. Feel how heavy they are. Feel them sink. They are being pulled down toward your thigh. Your wrists are feeling soft. Eric concentrate on not letting his need for a result show in his voice as he slowly works his way through the wall of Rocky's body, watching as his shoulders gradually relax. He talks for a while about his neck, about how heavy his head feels, and taking deep breaths as he almost impossibility approaching the moment of induction. In a monotone voice, he described a wide sandy beach with gentle waves rolling in and out of the shore as the white sand shimmers like porcelain. You are walking along the edge of the water toward a headland, Eric says. The wet sand feels solid under your feet. It is easy to walk on. Warm waves lap around your leg. Grains of sand swirl around. He describes the tiny ridged seashells and the coral rolling in the bubbling surf of the waves. Rocky is slumped on the creaking folding chair. His jaw has relaxed and his eyelid look heavy. All you are doing is listening to my voice and you feel fine. Everything is nice and safe. Juna is standing next to the window looking out at the pet cemetery. His jacket is open and the butt of his pistol shimmers red against his chest. In a little while, I am going to count backward from 200, and with each number, you are going to sink deeper and deeper into relaxation. And when I tell you to open your eyes, you are going to open your eyes and remember every detail from the first time you met the man you called the preacher, Eric says. Rocky remains still with his lower lip drooping slightly and his huge hands on his thighs. He looks like he is asleep, dreaming. Eric count down in a deep, soporific voice, his eyes monitoring Rocky's breathing, the movement of his bulging stomach. Parallel to the actual hypnosis process, Eric sees himself sink through murky water. It is so dark with mud that he can barely see Rocky in front of him. As air bubbles rise from his beard and his hair sways in the current, Eric breaks the sequence of numbers, skip a few but keeps counting down at an imperceptibly slowing rate. He knows he needs to find precise memories. The water gets even darker the deeper he goes. The current is stronger, pulling at his clothes from the side. The whole time Rocky looks like he is undergoing grotesque metamorphosis in the tugging, muddy water as if his face were made from loose sacking. 18, 17, 13, 12. Soon you are going to open your eyes, Eric says and watches Rocky's slow breathing. There is nothing to worry about here, nothing dangerous. Chapter 24. Rocky has entered such a deep trance that his heart rate is lower than during deep sleep. His breathing is like that of a hibernating animal, but at the same time, parts of the brain can be activated to a state of extreme focus. It is very nearly time to make him turn his attention to the preacher and try to explain what he is seen, trying to dig out the crystal clear memories that are lying preserved, right next to dreams and deliriums. Rocky's head is lolling forward and his dirty hair is scattered with pine needles after the hike through the forest. 4, 3, 2, 1, and now you open your eyes and remember exactly where you first met the unclean preacher. Through the screaming brown water, Eric sees Rocky shake his head, but in reality he is sitting on the chair with his eyes open and trying to moisten his lips with his tongue. His stomach is moving in time with his slow breathing. His chin lifts and his eyes stare straight through time and matter. Eric thinks that he needs to repeat these words and include a subtle command to get him to start talking. As soon as you feel ready, you can tell me what you see. Rocky licks his cracked lips. The grass is white, crunching underfoot, he says slowly. A black veil flutters from the top of the stuff, and small snowflakes are drifting to the ground. He starts muttering something Eric can't make out. Listen to my voice and tell me what you remember, he reminds him. Rocky's forehead is wet with sweat. He stretches out one leg and the chair creaks under his weight. The light is the color of chalk, he says quietly. Falling through the windows in the deep alcoves against a gold leaf ceiling hangs the defeated Xavier together with the other criminals. You are inside a church now, deep down in the fast-flowing dirty water. Rocky nods in response. His eyes are open wide and his hair is floating to the right of his head. Which church is it? Eric asks. He can hear his own voice tremble and tries to force himself to be calm, to find a tranquility within the hypnotic resonance. The preacher's church. What is it called? Eric asks, feeling his heart start to beat faster. Rocky's mouth moves slightly, but the only sound that comes out is a few clicks from his lips. Eric leans forward over his shoulder and hears the slow exhalation, the voice coming from deep in his throat. Scolinch, he says groggily. Scolinch, church, Eric repeat. Rocky nod, leans his head back and forms a soundless word with his lips. Eric exchanges a quick glance with Juna. They have got what they need. He ought to bring Rocky out of his deep trance now, but can't help asking another question. Is the unclean preacher there? Rocky smiles deeply and raises a weary hand as if to point at the tools on the wall of the little shed. Can you see him? Eric persists. In the church, Rocky whispers as his head lolls forward again. Over by the streaked window, Juna is starting to look stressed. Perhaps some visitors have arrived in the pet cemetery. Tell me what you can see, Eric says. Rocky trembles and a drop of sweat falls from the tip of his nose. I see the old priest with rock over the stubble on his drooping cheeks, the lipstick and his stupid expression, morose and silent. Go on, Osa, EPS, in pace, Rocky whispers to himself. His face switches and he shifts uneasily on the creaking folding chair. Flakes of green paint fall onto the chipboard floor. Juna moves backward and silently draws his pistol. Do you know what his name is? Eric asks. Say what his name is, loud enough for me to hear. The ugly old priest with his scrawny arms covering in tracks from all the fucking junk he is injected over the years, Rocky says, and his head jerks on one side, cloudy from bleeding under the skin and wrecked veins. But now he is wearing his snow white surplice No one is seeing anything. No one knows what is going on. His sister and daughter by his side, his closest colleagues. Are there other priestesses in the church? The pews are full of priestesses, row after row after row. Even though Juna is very quietly telling him to bring the hypnosis to an end, Eric urges Rocky to go deeper down to the place where there are only real memories. I am going to count down from 10 and then I get to 0. You will be in Scolding Church. And Rocky stand up, his head jerk, his eyes roll backward and he collapses over to the chair. He hits the floor, his head strikes the bags of compost and his feet switch spasmodically. His body arches as if he is trying to do that crab. His top slides up and he is gurgling gutturally with pain as his mouth gradually stretches open and his neck pulls back. His spine creaks. Eric hurries over and moves tools and equipment out of his reach. The floor thuds as Rocky rolls onto his side and a moment later his epileptic attack switches to chronic cramps. Eric kneels down and holds both hands under Rocky's big head to stop him hurting himself. His legs are kicking and jerking hard, crushing his heels down on the floor. Juna is holding his gun close to his body and looking at Eric with icy grey eyes. You need to find a new hiding place, he says. I saw police officers in the woods by the school. They have probably had another tip-off. Otherwise, they wouldn't be here again. They will be bringing in dogs, if they haven't already done so, and searching with helicopters. Rocky's attack is fading, but he is still breathing fast and one of his legs jerks a few more times. Eric rolls him gently onto his side. Rocky blinks. He's soaked with sweat as he lets out a tired cough. You had an epileptic fit while you were hypnotized, Eric explains. God, he sighs. Eric, you have to go. Get as far away as you can and hide, Juna says again. Chapter 25. Eric quickly drinks some water, wipes his mouth, opens the door cautiously and looks out at the pet cemetery, then leaves the shed. Without looking back, he walks along the path between the trees and the little graves. When he reaches the forest, he starts to walk faster. He gets to a wider path and runs for a while. He can hear dogs barking over the school. Eric leaves the path and heads into denser forest instead. He forces his way through pine thickest, scratching his cheek and one eyelid and making them sting. He crouches down and makes his way through the trees, through spider's web and over glossy fungi and mushrooms. He is so out of breath now that his body is dripping with sweat. The ground slopes down steeply in front of him. The barking is getting closer and he can hear police officers shouting instruction to their dogs. Eric gets a stitch and presses his hand hard against his side and carries on, running through the forest, which has suddenly opened up. He can see reeds and bulrushes between the trees and just has time to detect an acrid smell of marshes and fermentation before one foot sinks into the wet moss. He can hear the sound of a helicopter further away over the treetops. Eric hurries forward, but the ground feels like it is rocking. Water rises around his feet, up over his ankle, and he realizes he can't keep going across the bog. He needs to turn back, but sinks deeper and almost falls. He leans one hand against a tree trunk. The cool moisture is racing out of the ground, and there is a sucking sound as the wet moss lets go of his foot. He has to crawl back, getting his knees wet and cold. He eventually reaches firm ground and starts running. A dragonfly flashes past, and he sees a white deer's skull lying next to a rotten log. He jumps across a furrow full of deep brown water with a layer of black leaves at the bottom. Without looking back, he runs into the forest once more. Twigs snap under his feet, and after a while he can't run any further and walks as fast as he can. Instead, he holds large branches aside with his hands and lowers his head to protect himself from ticks. The dog patrol is closer now, their barks echoing tinnily like thunder. They have picked up his scent. Soon they will have caught up with him. A strong impulse to just lie flat on his stomach and give up, hand himself over to the police, overwhelm him. Imagine this could all be over. He could be warm again, allowed to rest and start to focus on what has happened. And whoever has done this to him, I am going to give up now, he thinks and stops, his heart pounding. There are no hiding places in the forest. Then he remembers Nestor getting shot straight through his chest. The calls are drawing nearer. A hunting team surrounding their prey. Eric goes cold inside. He has to try to reach the building by the sky slope, carry on round the bog in a wide arc, then find his way out through the forest. He sets off running again, dodging between the trunks, through dense undergrowth. Ticks scratch at his face, arms and legs. The dogs are barking frantically behind him. He is so out of breath that his throat feels raw, and he knows he has no chance of outrunning the dogs if they have been set loose. Dry pine cones crunch beneath his feet, flowering heather bushes his legs. The ground is sloping up now, and the lactic acid in his muscle make his calves feel tight and heavy. A tall rock face covering in sphagnum moss and lichen rises up between the trees. He keeps running and starts to climb, forcing himself upward. When the moss starts to slip beneath him and he begins to slide and end up scraping his hand to stop himself. When he is finally at the top of, he lies down, flat out, his head pounded against the rock beneath him. He wipes the sweat from his eyes and sees the ochre-colored housing block in bourne above the trees. A crow caws and shuffles clumsily at the top of a fir below him. Not far away on the edge of the marsh, he can see the police officers circling around with their dogs straining at their leads. The police are talking into their radios and shouting to each other and pointing out across the bog. Suddenly, one of the dogs signals that it is picking up a scent. It turns back into the forest, following his trail through the trees. Its leash stretches tight and the dog starts barking loudly. Eric shuffles backward and hears the helicopter approaching. He crouches down and starts to run, aware that he has to put some distance between him and the dog patrol. His legs tremble with the exertion as he runs sideways down the slope into denser forest again. He follows a path and emerges onto a running track covered with damp bark chippings. A woman in a pink tracksuit is standing still, stretching her muscles, and he hesitated briefly before running past her. Her neck and chest are sweaty. She has a distant look on her face and he sees that she is listening to music on her headphone. Just as he passes her, she looks up at him. Her face stiffens and she looks away a little too quickly. He realizes that she has recognized him and sees her start to move in the opposite direction out of the corner of his eye. He carries on round the next bend and stops in front of a map of the nature reserve. A red dot at the bottom marks Sikla Park, where he is now. He looks along the route of the Swampland trail at the running track, marshes, water courses and lakes, then decided to carry on down toward the water at Siglagen. Eric takes long strides across a patch of tall blueberries, then runs straight into the pathless forest. Dog patrol are approaching from several directions now. He forces his way through a thickest and catches his jacket on a branch. Eric can feel himself standing to panic, tears the cloth loose, and stumble out into a clearing. He is so out of breath that he bends double for a few moments, spits, then carries on through the trees. Part 26. Eric runs past a fallen tree and carries on through the forest as he hears the barking of the dogs echo between tree trunks. After half a kilometer or so, he reaches a stream. The bottom is covered with red stone and the water shimmers brown with iron. Eric steps into the ice-cold water and wades along the stream, hoping the dog will lose his scent for a few minutes. He wishes he could phone Jackie to tell her that he is innocent. He carries beer the thought of her believing that he is a murderer. The media and social networking site must be full of exaggerated accusations, details from his life, things from long ago that are now being dragged up as proof of his guilt. Eric tries to wade faster but slips on a stone, falls and hits his knee on the bottom and let out a gasp. Cold and pain shoot up through his bone, up into his spine and neck. He stands up and tries to run. The stones slide and slip beneath his feet. His clothes are heavy and the water foam up around him. He reaches a bend. The banks are steeper here. The water canal narrower and faster ahead of him. The trees lean over the water and he has to bend down beneath their branches. He carries on wading as the stream passes through thicker forest. He can no longer hear the dogs, just the water lapping around his legs. He makes his way round another bend and decides to get out of the stream. Dripping with water, Eric scrambled out of water and hurries through the forest on squelching shoes. Exhaustion and his clinging clothes mean that he keeps stumbling. Up ahead, he can see the shimmering water of the long, thin Cyclone that sinks down behind a large rock, pushing past the narrow trunks of a clump of rowan trees. Panting so hard that his chest hurts. This is hopeless, he thinks. It is over. I haven't got anywhere to go. He has load of acquaintances, people he socializes with, colleagues of many years standing, a few good friends, but no one he can call right now. He is pretty sure that Simone would be willing to help, but she is probably being watched, and Benjamin would do whatever he could. He knows that, but Eric would rather die than put his son in any danger. There are only a few people he knows he could call: Juna, Nellie, and maybe Jackie. If Jackie has gone to see her sister, perhaps he could borrow her flat, assuming she doesn't believe what the papers have been saying. Eric looks at his phone. It is only got 4% of its battery charge left. He doesn't want to put Nellie at risk, but he calls her number anyway. If her phone's being monitored, then that is that. But if he is going to stand any chance at all, he has to take the risk. He is completely surrounded out here. He has no other option. The sound of the helicopter clatters in the distance. Then all he can hear is the wind in the treetops. His phone rattles and he hears the ringing tone. And then there is a click. Nellie, she answers in a calm voice. It is me. He says, can you talk? I don't know. I think so. She says, if this counts as talking. Nellie, listen, I don't want to cause you trouble, but I need help. What is going on? Really? She asked. I didn't do the things they are saying about me. I have got no idea what this is all about. Eric, I know, you are innocent, she says, but can't you just hand yourself into the police? Say you surrender. I will support you. Be a witness, anything. They will shoot me the moment they catch sight of me. You have no idea what. I understand how you feel, she interrupts, but doesn't it just get even worse the longer you wait? The police are everywhere, Nellie. They have taken your computer. They have packed your whole office into boxes. They are outside our house in Bromma. We are at the Karolinska, and Nellie, I need to stay in hiding for a while. There are no other options. But I want you to know that I will understand if you can't help me. I love adventures, she says sarcastically. Please, Nellie, there is no one else I can ask. He can hear the dogs barking again. Closer now. I can't get involved, she says quietly. You can see that it would cause problems for Martin. But sorry, I asked, Eric says, feeling black hopelessness fill his heart. But I have got an old place, Nellie goes on. Have I ever told you about Solbakken? It used to belong to Dad's parents. How do I get there? Eric, I am probably not much good at car chases. I haven't got the balls, but I can go, and I don't know, I can rent a car at Statoil or something. You would do that for me? He asks. Tell me you love me. She replies cheerfully, I love you. Where shall we meet? Do you know? The bathing beach of Sikla Strand. Eric asks. No, but I am sure I can find it. There is a school or nursery right next to the beach. Wait there until I show up. He hears the dogs again as their barking echoes through the trees. Eric crouches down and runs through the dense undergrowth at the edge of the water and pulls off his shoes and heavy trousers. He bundles his clothes up and hides in the bushes as a helicopter passes low overhead. His pursuers are getting closer. The dogs sound eager and are barking excitedly. Dressed in just his underpants and vest, he wades out into Sikiljon. The chill stabs at his feet and legs. He can hear sirens from emergency vehicles from several directions carried across the water and through the trees. Eric sees blue lights flashing over an Alva gun on the bridge across the inlet leading to Jelojan. There are at least 3 police cars. The vehicles' light reflect off the metal shreds of the bridge and cross the crowns of the trees on both shores. The helicopter roars over the tree tops again and he sinks quietly in the water. He holds his breath but can clearly feel the change in the current as the helicopter passes. The water of the lake forms small waves radiating out in rapid circles. He carries on, further out, slipping down amongst the water lilies between their long stalks and the slimy bottom of the lake. There he let the bundle of clothes containing his phone fill with bubbling water and sink. In the other direction, beyond the dam, he can see that the bridge over the Sikla channel has been blocked off. There are police cars everywhere. The tall fiberglass railings shimmer like huge plates of blue light. A helicopter is hovering above the sky slope. Eric starts to swim, taking big strokes, feeling the cold against his hips and his smell of seawater. It can't be many hundred meters to the other side. Two jetties reach out into the water in front of the housing blocks erected by Atlas Copco after the war, the house their guest workers.